Sorry.
All good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles a few months ago with the main reason being I was looking to facilitate a career change. I used to work in consulting for a while, but it wasn't really interesting me enough. And so like a year ago while I was still in consulting, I started getting into film production more. So like I started a production company with two of my friends and we produced a short film, put our own money into it to sort of like build a short film as a proof of concept to demonstrate value to maybe potential employers or whoever, not really knowing that much about the industry, but we just wanted to gain experience. And so now at this point, I have since quit my consulting job and am now out in Los Angeles trying to make a career out of film. And I'm still not really sure as to where exactly I want that to go. If I want it to be learning the tools to just produce my own feature films and try to do that, or maybe learn a little bit more about different industry players through these classes of like a potential job that I could get working at a different company, a production company, etc. But so the experience has already been incredibly valuable. Like everybody has said, what I've been learning has been very applicable, and I've just finished up producing a second short film a few weeks ago in New York. That's why I missed our first module here. I was on set there. But like even just some of the lessons that we were already getting, I was able to like sort of apply and think about those in relation to the project I was working on. So very excited to continue learning and continue progressing on this.
Well, congrats on the jumping into the cold water and producing your short films already. That's pretty ballsy. That's great.
Yeah.
Good luck with the second one.
Thank you.
You need to share it when you're done with all of us. We want to see it.
All right.
Nicholas, good morning. You want to share a little about you?
Hi, how you guys doing? I'm from France right now, and I'm actually in France. I'll be back in LA in like 2 days actually, and I'm an actor, and I decided to do the business and management of entertainment, switching a little bit when I saw the COVID coming. Actually, I was on the acting certificate, and then I quickly changed. I went back for my holiday quarter for just 1 quarter, and I'll be back in LA on Monday.
Great. Good to have you back then. Barbara.
Hi there, I'm in DC. My background's in production management. I'm on the unscripted documentary side, Nat Geo, Discovery, History Channel. I was in LA working on television series, and I just decided to come back to the East Coast because I'd always wanted to work for those companies. So my background is more working on production budgets as opposed to the front end financing, distribution. Because when I start, that's already usually in place and it's been sold to a network. So this is interesting and a completely new area to me. Now I'm just working on my certificate, business and management.
That's great. But at least you have, I mean, obviously you already have tremendous production experience. So you know what's going on once everything's in place.
Right.
I think learning about what's going on behind the scenes might be a nice combination in the end.
And on the scripted side. So.
Right, exactly. Anina.
Hi, I'm Anina, so I'm currently in Paris right now. I'm a marketing coordinator at E1 in London. I've been there for almost 3 years now. So before I was on the digital side, and now I'm in theatrical, which is really great timing. So I've worked on marketing campaigns for quite big films like 1917, Green Book, Vice, If Beale Street Could Talk, Dark Waters, all that. So except with COVID, I have a lot of free time on my hands as basically the industry has just not died, but is on a bit of a pause, shall we say. And so I really wanted to take this class because I do have quite a good knowledge and grasp about budgets, but it's just on the P&A side. So I was just more interested in knowing about the producing side, just because you touch upon so many different elements to it. So to me, that was really interesting. And at the same time, I'm taking the legal primer class. So it's a lot of really good information that ties in both together. So sometimes I'll see a term that I'll see in one class. I'll be like, oh, I actually recognize that. It's really useful so far.
when you do the P&A, I don't know if you can share this information or not. I was always curious to see what the ranges are for P&A budgets on the level of the movies that you've worked on. You don't have to give us a precise number, but do you have like a range that you can share with us?
Yeah, so for example, it depends like what our budget is. Since like E1 is quite an independent studio, like we'll never have blockbusters. 1917 was almost like an aberration because it made over 45 million pounds at the box office in the UK, which is enormous. So a film like that will always be around ballpark 2 to 4 million. But let's say the box office target for a film will be around, let's say 2 million. It'll probably be around 900K for P&A.
For London. So this is your box office budget in London for a release in London. That's interesting.
Yeah, I only work in the UK department. So we just market films for the UK.
That's interesting because it speaks for also what P&A budgets would be for someone who buys a movie and releases it in any of the European territories that have similar taste buds, like Germany, Italy, Spain. Those would have similar budgets. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's interesting. Albert. He's
hello.
Like,
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Saying hello to everyone here from Singapore. Wow. So it's 1 a.m. right here in Asia. I'm currently unlike everyone on the call here, the rest of the class, I'm currently not in the entertainment industry, although I have been as an animator, 3D animator, back in a couple of years ago. And then I moved on since to become a tech consultant with a creative software company. So that's what I'm doing. And the reason why I just signed up for this course just purely out of interest. I've written scripts in the past, a couple, and entered them for competition before, but nothing more than that. So I'm just here to learn more, and it's been piquing my interest, and I'm enjoying the course so far.
Glad. I'm sorry I have to get you out of bed at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Fine.
Appreciate
I'm
you
quite
being here.
a night owl anyway. It's okay.
It's okay. Claude. Brian. Is it Brian? No, it's not Brian.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you know what? I'm using my husband's account.
I'm like, okay, doesn't look like Brian, but who knows?
I know.
Right, tell us who you are first.
Yeah, Cammie. This
Hi,
is Cammie Kinahan. Hi. And yeah, so my background is I was an entertainment attorney for a long time at studios. I worked at Fox and Paramount and Lionsgate and HBO. And then I decided I wanted to do more creative work. So I am getting my producing certificate. I've been taking writing courses, working with friends, trying to help them get their projects set up. And I did a short before COVID, a little short, and for a friend of mine who's got who's developing an app for women's programming. And now I'm doing another piece for her. I'm just writing it, in the process of writing it. So I'm having fun. After all those years of being a lawyer, I am realizing that the creative side is much more fun. So this course is very valuable, of course, because it's part of the producing certificate. And, if you're going to produce, you need to know about the money, the finance side of it.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, thank you for sharing that, Cammie. Anna.
Hi, how are you?
Good morning. Good.
Good morning. I have missed the first class as well. I got COVID, so I have been sort of out of action. I got it pretty badly, so finally starting to feel a bit better. But I'm originally from Australia, as you can probably hear. And then I moved to New York and lived there for about three and a half years. And currently, so I was an actor in Australia and did a bit of casting and producing, mainly of plays for a theatre company there, and moved over as an actress to New York, worked there for a small time, and then the work just stopped for me. Nothing changed. I didn't do anything different, but you know, the nature of the beast, the industry is so up and down. And then I moved into the events industry, which when COVID hit, you know, that also died. So I was furloughed, and I decided that I needed to do something with my time. And I've always been interested in the other side of the camera, but really wanted to learn more. So I'm doing the producing certificate, and this course itself is probably the one that I struggle with the most, the finance side of it all. But I'm loving it so far and ready to learn more.
And you know, Anna, then if you get stuck somewhere, just reach out to me, send me an email. I go on Zooms all the time, walk people through materials one-on-one. So don't be shy if you find yourself struggling with something, if you find yourself get stuck, just don't get it for whatever reason, please reach out, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course. Susanna, good morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Zuzana. I'm currently in Poland, but I've been based in London for the past couple of years. I was working mostly in music PR and a little bit of production and like creative direction, but mainly in the music industry. And then I made a move sort of to the film PR industry where I was for a little bit. And since film was always kind of my main focus, it was my main interest, I really liked it, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about the production side. And I'm also really interested in screenwriting, so I feel like this is a good you know, a good combination of skills. And yeah, the world of finance in general is completely foreign to me, and I thought I would really struggle, but everything is so interesting and so informative so far. So yeah, I'm very happy with it.
I'm glad. And again, if you get stuck with something, you know where to find me.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you for sharing this. Frederic?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm originally from Germany, and my accent probably gives it away. And I live in New York City now. I work as an associate producer here for a small indie film company, 3DMC. Some of the films we made are Premature, The Florida Project. The last film that I actually worked on is well, Premature was the last one I worked on. Another one we did a few years ago that got a bit of, actually quite a bit of buzz, was Tangerine, a film that was shot entirely on an iPhone. And so I started out as an assistant, then became an associate producer, and I'm now beginning to tackle short films, proof of concepts, etc. And I just feel that because I was kind of thrown into the water, there are a lot of things I don't know yet. And some of the big questions I had coming into this course were how to value a project, then also how to deal with international sales agents, because I've never actually done that. I've seen some paperwork, but I don't really know how these deals sort of get closed, what the terms are. And so module 2 was a real eye-opener for me and super, super helpful. I'm currently working my way through module 3, but yeah, I've only good things to say about this course so far. I really am gaining a lot of knowledge and just taking a lot sort of from the material. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, Frederic. And we'll go, of course, more into, you know, how to deal with distribution and sales agents when we get into the agreements, the essential agreements portion of the modules. We're just laying out the groundwork right now. So get the basics, but we're going to dive into it much deeper. So I'm sure you're going to learn a lot more about that part. Thank you. Is it Aiju? Aiju? Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning. Hi. My name is Aiju. You guys can call me Giovanna.
Oh, Giovanna.
And I'm originally from Taiwan, and I live in Los Angeles right now. I have a official legal background, so I recently graduated from law school at USC, and I currently working at a litigation law firm, but I always wanted to practice entertainment law. So a few months ago, I've worked with an entertainment attorney for the distribution side, international distribution, because I can speak Chinese. And but unfortunately, he's got COVID, so we paused right now. But everything's good, and I feel this class is very helpful and informative. And I wish to learn more in the near future. Yeah.
Okay. Well, litigation is a very good basis for everything. So I'm glad you're starting there rather than transactional law. You'll see, especially in the entertainment industry, how important it is to start from the aspect of or from the place of litigation. It'll be very useful to you, trust me. There's always something going on. And someone sues someone for everything all the time. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, is it Letian? Am I saying your name correctly?
Hi, Jeanette. Yes, Letian.
Yeah, I saw your cat earlier. I love it.
I know. Yeah, he kind of just like took over my camera. And hi, everyone. Good morning. So I currently I'm based in West Hollywood, LA, but I was born and raised in Shanghai, China. I came to the States about 10 years ago. So I went to University of Wisconsin and got an accounting degree. And for the past 3 years, I lived in Chicago, and I worked as a auditor for Ernst Young, like a Big Four accounting firm. So I audit financial statements for clients. But over there, like Chicago, the main industry composition is more manufacturing, heavy machinery, and that's like really not my interest. So since like a young age, I've always loved movie and TV shows, and I have always wanted to work in TV and movie production. So when I read your info, Janet, I just like I felt like resonated with you because that's like what got me to the States and to LA is basically my passionate about TV and movie production.
Right.
So last summer in August, in the middle of the pandemic, I also made a decision to move from Chicago to LA to be closer to job opportunities in TV and movie productions. So right now I'm in the business and management of entertainment certificate program. And I hope to, after this quarter, I hope to, when the production kind of like resume, I hope to find a job to start as like assistant to production accountant or assistant to production coordinator and work my way up and down the road with the mind of becoming like a line producer in the future.
You could also do, first of all, welcome to Los Angeles and welcome to COVID because you just picked the hotspot of it. But you can also do, you can also be assistant to a line producer because that way you get closest to the accounting side of things, closest to the budgeting side of things, and learn about what line producers do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good plan. Thank you for sharing. Christopher, you're welcome. Christopher, where are you? Hey.
I'm in LA. I'm a filmmaker. I work as a writer and director sometimes. And I started in visual effects and pre-visualization. So I figured out how to shoot stuff for other directors. And yeah, I've had better luck selling stuff than getting stuff made. So I decided to produce my own science fiction film that I wrote. It's about a $2 million movie, but I don't know anything about the financial or distribution side. So that's why this class was perfect for me.
So when you do previs, is it just previs for animated content or visual effect driven content or also live action?
Usually live action. I mean, a lot of it was commercial work, but then sometimes on movies. And I have done layout on animated features too, but yeah, usually it's live action.
Interesting.
Which is either, sometimes it's just like creative storyboards and sometimes it's very technical. It's pretty good,
I'm going to share this with you. I had a course participant in one of my past classes who had a business plan. And part of his business plan was that every movie that he would produce and finance through investors financing that he was raising would have to be fully prevised, which means that the entire movie would basically already be shot. So you could, on the computer basically, and then you could see where the story was lacking, where the characters didn't make sense, and you could basically change the movie because you did it once. Now you see how it feels and how you could do it better. I thought it was a great idea. I just know it's pretty expensive, but he budgeted it as part of the, I think he called it development cost.
Yeah. No, it's free. I mean, it's free for me. I love it. I shot a short film years ago that was in a room with a big mirror, and I prevised it before just to find shots, and I discovered shots that I would have never found on the day because I had a camera. I could just move around the virtual room and found all sorts of reflections and stuff. So it's really useful.
That's what I think. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that with us. Maybe we'll knock on the door next time and say, hey, free this 90-minute movie. Why don't you?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Right.
$60,000 or something, but why not? Yeah.
I know, exactly. Well, that's actually not that expensive.
That wouldn't be that bad, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Christopher.
Sure.
Juan, is it Juan Pedro or just Juan?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's whatever the two. It's great. Hi guys, how are you? I'm Juan. I currently live in LA, but I'm from Venezuela. I'm actually studying the directing certificate on UCLA, but I, want to be also a producer in the future. I'm horrible at numbers. I can barely sum, so I needed somewhat like this to help me out, and it's really helping me out. And I had the class with Jim, and Jim recommended Jeanette's class, and so I straight away, went to the module and to the course Silicon and put it in Jeanette's class. So I have a background in animation, and my goal is to direct and produce. So nice to meet you all.
That's great. Well, Jim has paid a lot of money to send people to me. I'm kidding, because it doesn't. We don't get paid based on students showing up or not showing up. That's UCLA. Just for us, it's always the same. But Jim is teaching business of entertainment right now, and what he does, which I think is great for this semester. I think he does it next semester again. I don't know. He has always these amazing guest speakers. So I love just seeing what I think the course is set up for that. So every week someone else. It's pretty interesting. And then he does obviously
it's amazing.
Yeah, isn't it? I love the people. I actually watch all the recordings because I want to see what they say. It's amazing.
Yeah, they're super interesting. Yeah.
And then I think he does producing, directing, and writing of non-scripted.
Interesting.
He does that too, which is also fun. All right, enough about my husband. Katja. She's like, what?
I was not ready, sorry. Hi.
Okay.
I am originally from Italy, but I live in Germany since 7 years now. And I'm currently in Berlin. That's why it's so dark here. I'm kind of new in the industry. I'm following the business and management of entertainment certificate.
Mm-hmm.
I started actually last year, just before the pandemic, just before the lockdown. It was a long time I wanted to kind of switch industry to film industry because my background is in news. And I'm working in an agency that produces news videos. And recently I worked a lot with production company and filmmakers that were coming to ask for footage to produce their own stuff. Right. And I started to get more interested in the production and distribution side of the business, actually. Right. So yeah, I started last year, and so far everything is new for me. So the more information I get, the best is. I'm really focused on learning as much as I can.
Perfect. Be a sponge is all I say. Griffin, how about you?
Hey, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. I actually ran away from LA during COVID when that hit, wanted to go somewhere where production was going to be a little bit more consistent. I'm an actor, so a lot of behind the camera has been only familiar in what I've seen and lived through, but I really want to make that classic transition from actor to director. So I've been screenwriting for a few years now, trying to produce my own stuff. And like I've heard from a lot of people, your class has just been so helpful on all of the like the actual nitty gritty details behind the real money making part of the business. So I thank you so much for the in-depth knowledge that we've already gotten in 2 weeks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad I have somewhat of a reputation. I didn't think it was a good one, but okay. Erin, how about you?
Hi, I have moved around a lot. So I originally am from Honduras and I moved to the US when I was 17. I lived in South Korea for a while and now I'm back in the US. I came back right when COVID started, so perfect timing. I actually have a background in teaching and I decided I wanted to change and I wanted to get into development or like pre-production for a TV series, and I'm mostly interested in local language content from Asia, mainly Korea, China, and Japan. So that is what I'm trying to do. I'm getting my certification in the business management from the UCLA Extension, and I'm just trying to get internships now to get some experience. But yeah, that's me.
Not sure I can help you much with that kind of content, but at least I can help you with understanding how the basics of making money with global content would look like. So I hope that it at least helps you somewhat.
Yes, of course.
All right, who else do we have? Who did I, let me just see here who I haven't gotten. Nicola, Susanna, I got blah, 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 blah. Juan, Michelle. I think, is it Mia? Hi.
Hi. I actually currently I live in LA too, and I come from China, and I was a commercial producer in China for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And because the commercial is totally different with film, and I quit my job and came to US like 3 years ago because my English is so bad in the beginning. I spent 2 years to learn the language, and now last year I started my the directing certificate in here, and yeah, now I'm here, and I'm very curious about the industry in US of the financial things. So I took this class. I think it's perfect for me.
I'm glad you did. All right. So who else do I have that I haven't had? Crystal.
Hello. I am based in Puerto Rico. I'm a little older than some people in this group. I've been a working professional for almost 16 years in stage productions. I've directed a lot of mostly opera, but also musicals and plays. And 2.5 years ago, I directed my first short at a 6-week intensive film workshop. And it really sort of confirmed some things that I had explored when I was younger, that I wanted to sort of transition into that. And COVID has really accelerated my mentality in terms of transitioning. So I've been spending COVID, I'm writing a couple of scripts. I'm making a couple of short things to build up my portfolio on my own and trying to consider what my next steps are. But, you know, I've run a couple of opera companies as well as artistic director. And I'm really interested in potentially producing because I know how to manage teams and I know how to manage budgets. But I've been really afraid to sort of delve in there, but this class is really helping me to wrap my head around that it is possible and tangible, and I think I'd be really good at it. So I'm trying to figure out what my next transition is, and I'm hoping that later this year I'll be in LA when COVID settles down a bit.
Yeah, please wait until it's done. But obviously, you know, your management skills when it comes to teams are going to be usually helpful when you run productions like these. So it's a great start.
Great, thanks.
And then is it V? But I don't know the exact name. Is it V? V.
Hi everyone, it's Vanessa.
Vanessa. I have to write that down. Who's what? Vanessa. Yes, shoot.
So I am one of the very few who also is not in entertainment yet. I'm a finance director and have been in finance and accounting for 20 years now. And I'm just interested in finding out about entertainment financing and maybe switching over sometime in the near future when COVID is out.
Great.
So the class has definitely been informative. It's been a lot easier than I expected. And I was speaking with one of the class members earlier, and we were talking about how similar entertainment finance is to nonprofit finance.
Oh, really? Who knew?
And the fact that you don't really have a lot of money.
That's true. Well, the difference is nonprofit, you actually get to deduct that investment from your taxes. Not so much with film.
Right.
Thank you.
Comment was that entertainment is usually no profit, at least if you're the writer or the actor, compared to
Right.
nonprofit.
Should be a nonprofit thing. I mean, just for that reason. Diana, did we share from you yet?
Hi, sorry.
Hi,
I'm
no worries.
on the way. So it's evening here. I'm based in Moscow, but now I'm at the Polar Circle. It's a little bit cold here, -22 Celsius. So yeah, it is, and very snowy. So as I mentioned to you last time at Jim's session, for more than 13 years, I've been in charge of content distribution, like everything, series, movies, animation. And I have also my producer's animation series and a couple of movies. But I am used to work for bigger companies, and now I would like to produce my own animation series. So actually that's why I'm running this certificate of entertainment business. And actually this is part of my classes, and I'm very happy that I'm having it. It's very interesting and useful for me. So thank you. Thanks a lot.
Great. And what we might do, especially because you are a voice from the other side of the planet, we might just ask you what your feeling is about certain content pieces, and if you think they are sellable in your territory, for example. So when we get into talking about actual projects, I'd love to get your feedback. Thank you for sharing that. I think Alex, is it Alex?
Oh yeah, it's Aleix.
Aleix, all right.
Yeah, I'm originally from Barcelona, Spain, and I've been in LA for 2 years now. And before that, I was Chicago-based, that's where I got my undergrad in production.
Great.
And yeah, while in LA, I've kind of like, well, right now I'm in the business and management of entertainment certificate. But I really deep down, I'm taking it because I want to write, direct, kind of like produce the whole, be involved in the whole process of whatever I create. And yeah, and I love this class because I want to know about, like, you know, being able to, like, how to manage as an independent producer for the most part.
Right, and you'll get that, trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and oh yeah, and I really like on the first week the Cassian Elves interview, just because I was an intern at Macro.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, that was very informative.
Yeah, he was great, and I actually did a new interview last week Sunday, which I put into module 4 with Roy Ashton, who is agent at the Gersh agency, very high-level agent. I interviewed him. I could only do it via Zoom because that's all we can do, but it was very interesting because he talked about how the pandemic affected the industry from his side, because he sells and he represents talent. So I plugged it into the next module. So you guys should definitely check it out now that we talk about agents and interviews. Is it Ruija? Ruija?
Yes. Hello.
Did I say this correctly?
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. Hello, everybody. So I'm RJ.
RJ.
You can call me RJ. And I was born and raised in Beijing, China. And currently I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Great.
Well, I graduated from my college in 2019. And I'm probably doing nothing during the current pandemic, like last year. And also I'm a freelance producer right now. Yeah, but I never done the financing class before, so that's why I'm here. Yes.
Great. Great. Well, I think I have everyone. Did I miss someone? Because I wanted to make sure we meet everyone that we can meet. Who did I miss? Speak up. No one. Great. So the reason why I did this morning, and I'm going to go into the content, is because I want you guys to just see who else is in the class. Because as you go forward, you're going to maybe potentially network with each other, because people land in certain places and they do. We have a lot of lawyers here, which is fantastic. Everyone always needs a lawyer. And you have lawyers with the different kind of experiences, which is even better. And then we have content creators, we have actors, we have writers. So I really encourage you to kind of stay in touch with each other. And that's what I've done with previous courses. You can use this Zoom platform to do meetings if you want with each other, and especially to just log on half an hour earlier, like you did earlier. You started talking with each other. So just feel free to log on half an hour earlier if you want to, and just chitter chatter with each other, where you are, what you're doing, and maybe how you can help each other. So that was the basic idea, to get to know you a little bit. I mean, I obviously read your entrance survey, so I knew a little bit, but I didn't share them with everyone. So it's good to just meet everyone and see who's here, what we're doing, and how we can potentially help each other. So now I'm going to go and try to share my screen. I'm going to see if I can make this happen this morning. Let me just move this over here. I had a few little issues with my computer last night. See if I can get this done. All right, where's the share screen button? Hold on. Let me just release this. Share screens. Okay, so share screen, show me which one. I'm sharing screen 1. Can you guys see a cover for a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So what I'm now no longer seeing is many of you, and I also don't see the chat for some reason. I have no idea why this is going on. So if you guys have questions, please do me a favor. Just I will obviously announce when we can answer questions. But if you have questions in between, feel free to just interrupt me. If I can't answer it right that minute, I'll tell you. I'll get back to it. So as I said, I don't see the chat window right now. All right, let's get into it. Module 3 and Module 4 is what we're going to talk about today. Some of you have already looked into Module 3. I'm going to go into some more essentials and some more details, especially talking about how to choose a viable project. It's great to choose a project, but what actually works for the global market, what to do with budgets and how to make them feasible, how to package a cast and director, what the steps are we need to kind of look at, how to get a project on screen and on what screen, and how to generate profit. We're going to do a little case study, but it's just going to be a small one. The first thing I want to do is, did any of you have any questions about the modules 1 or 2? Okay, moving on. So we're going to talk a little bit about creativity today, simply because it is important for someone, even if you're producing, not writing, or if you're investing, not writing, not producing, or if you're producing, investing, and writing. For all of you, you need to kind of know what a good story entails. How do you get it? When I read a script, I've read thousands of scripts by now because I've been doing it a little bit. I found it very helpful in the beginning of my career to study actually screenplay writing. And I studied that at USC. And I also did some sessions with Sid Field and some other script teachers, doctors, whatever you want to call them. And the book that Sid Field wrote, which I read very early on, it's called The Screenplay, yada, yada, something. I think I'm suggesting it somewhere in my course as a recommendation. Really helped me in understanding and dissecting when someone sends me a script to co-produce or finance, or just if a writer approaches me with a script as a producer, how do I know it's actually something that works? And funny enough, in the Western world, and it's a little bit different in the Asian world and even in Bollywood, the way stories are told is in 3 acts. So every story, no matter if it's a short film, 10-minute movie, or if it's a 90-minute movie, or if it's a TV show, every story has kind of a bubble and a rhythm within that bubble to it. And it's a 3-act bubble. In television, we often talk about the 5-act structure because it's separated by commercials in many places. But if you look at it overall, you're still going to see even that 5-act structure for a television show resembles a 3-act structure when you look at each episode separately and what it entails. Well, now with television, you have a bit of an overarching development component to it because you are creating character arcs that go over seasons. So what happens in a 90-minute movie or even a short movie, even documentary, doesn't matter what genre it is, expands in a TV version because of the longer seasons. However, every episode has its own little bubble that it needs to establish and tell us a story that makes sense. Even if the story in the end has a cliffhanger to go to the next episode, we still have to have an episode that deals with something that has a beginning, middle, and end. So what is that? So when we look at 3 acts, we're looking at the setup first, which is when we look at a screenplay, about the first third of your screenplay. When you do a movie that's about 90 minutes long, your screenplay is anywhere from 100 to maybe 120 pages. And it can be more if it has long descriptions, and it can be less if the writer decides to be very short with descriptions. So just know that. But setting the mood and not being afraid to describe in a script is also a helpful tool for a reader, like a producer or an executive who you're going to pitch this to later, to understand the mood and the world that you're creating. You know, so don't be shy to tell your writer, or if you write yourself, to describe the story and the world that we're moving into with the story in detail, not just write something that has dialogue and, you know, Peter says this, Laura says this, and that's it. So we don't really know where they are, what they do, what they wear. So when we talk about the setup in the first act, we're talking about getting to know our leading characters in a way that already tells us who they are. So when I read the first 30 pages, I'm looking at characters and I'm feeling characters that I know exactly what their apartment looks like, what they're wearing and why they're wearing what they're wearing, the style of clothing. I know, I can imagine the car they're driving. I know exactly what kind of art would be in their apartment or not. I know if the apartment is messy or not. This is the detail that I have to sense already in the beginning, in the first 30 pages when I'm reading a script. I have to know these people. I have to know who I'm dealing with. I know it sounds a little weird, but, and I'm not saying you need to write in the first act, you know, the apartment is messy. What I'm saying is you're describing a character that leads me to believe as the reader is that kind of a person. And then what I'm also learning in the first 30 pages is what their issue is, what their problem is. And it's not just the problem that drives the story plot, meaning the actor killed someone and we're going to find out later he killed someone. We also find out in the first 30 pages why he potentially kills someone, what the issue is that he's fighting with, his inner demon. What is that? And then we also learn about what he wants and what he needs. And these are 2 different things. Like in life, what you want might not always be what you actually need to be a developed person, an evolved person. So those 2 levels of what the character wants and what he actually needs to evolve and, you know, be round in the end of the movie is something that we need to shed light on in the first act already. Now, we're not telling the audience in the beginning, this is everything that's going to happen, but we're giving them a sense of what the journey for this character is going to be. That's why the first 30 pages in your script are probably going to be the most important 30 pages you'll ever write, because this is the part of the script that any executive or producer will read and will decide whether or not they're going to read page 31. It's really like that, because all of us get a lot of scripts, and when we are not enticed in the first act of a project, movie, TV, documentary, whatever it might be, we already lose interest. And because we all work on many projects at the same time, we don't even want to spend time anymore. I finish reading a script only if it's someone I know, or it's someone like in the course where I want to give them feedback on, and I really need to go into detail on what feedback I want to give them. And that includes change the first act, change the second act, change the third act. So that's the only reason why I would read in the end. But if someone like a co-producer or producer would send me a script and say, finance this or co-finance this, and the first act sucks, I'm not even going to continue reading. And I'm being honest about this because most of executives feel the same way. So just, they probably wouldn't tell you, but just know that that's probably what's going to happen. Now, you have an incident in the beginning that starts the journey for the character into the plot point for your story. So you just need to get us in there, get us in the driver's seat, and make us interested in your characters and in the story plot that is going to evolve. Now, when you go into the second act, we call it the confrontation, but it's basically also the evolving of your story. So in the second act, you're going to have a midpoint somewhere around page 30 where things shift. So the second act starts with, first act, we have a problem. Second act starts with, how are we going about solving the problem? What is this character doing? And also in combination with other characters, who are new characters that are now coming in that play a role. How are they going about dealing with the issue that we are introduced with in act 1? At midpoint, ideally, you basically throw us off course. We think they'll go this way and they're going to solve it. And at the midpoint of the script, they're doing something we don't expect. Something happens we don't expect. In every script, you just need to remember, you're allowed a maximum of 2 coincidences. And I say this because lazy writers do things like, oh, this all of a sudden happened. And that's really not something you can do. It's used when a writer doesn't know how to deal with a motivational story point, meaning a story journey or a story development that comes out of the character, rather than, oh, this happens. He goes on the street and the book landed on his head and now he has a concussion and doesn't remember who he is. You can do one of those coincidences, maybe 2, but don't do more, because it's going to feel like your character is not connected to the story. It's going to feel like there's a separation between the story and what happens to him, because it just happens to him or her. And that's just not interesting enough. But if something happens that they created, where they did something wrong, where they made a wrong decision, where it's motivated in who they are, that connects us to the character, because it now gives us the opportunity to learn about them and to say, why on earth did you do this? Are you an idiot? Or something where we say, please don't, this is stupid, this decision is bad, it can only end bad. So it helps us root for the character if anything that happens comes out of the motivated character and their arc. You can have 2 coincidences. Remember that, no more than 2, otherwise you're losing me for sure. And Jim hates it when we watch a show and I see the story, I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Such lazy writing. This happens and now they have to deal with it because it's a coincidence. And I'm sure you guys that are the actors, you can feel exactly what I'm saying, because it's like, really guys, what is up with you? Can I just not get something that comes out of my character that I can actually show some range with and show some emotion with? Lazy writing. So you as a producer would look at a script and say, dear writer, I like what you did with the plot, but I need you to move this coincidence into a character development and make this story plot come out of a character decision or a motivation that the character has. So remember, in the midpoint, you're changing direction, you are throwing me off, and at the end of the second act, you're reaching a point where the second plot point is now, showing us, okay, we're back on track after the midpoint threw us off. We're back on track, we're back on track, we're back on track. Now at plot point 2, you're going to do something that is not predictable. So you're going to, again, throw us off, but it's going to have to do with something that starts the third act, which is basically the cliff note of your first act. In the third act, you're going to speed up the chase, or you speed up the storytelling, because you're now leading us to the conclusion. But you have to lead us to the conclusion in a way that we don't know what the end is going to be. Even when it's a romantic comedy and we know the prince is going to marry the princess, we still don't want to know how that happens. We still want to not guess how they get together. So the more you can show us that are obstacles of the people meeting and getting together, the better it is. So you think about the climax, the third act, as something where you take us on a mini chase, on a mini journey of twists and turns that will help us solve the problem. Just before the end, though, you're going to make it impossible to solve the problem, or make it seem there is just no way this is ever going to end in any way that makes any sense. So when you read a story and when you design a story, and it's really important today because the viewer out there is so educated, because we all go online, we watch, we stream, we see content all the time. We become an educated audience in the sense that we can guess what happens next. And that's okay as long as we guess wrong. Because if we guess right, it becomes boring. It's like, ugh, I knew that they would do that. What did I watch the other day? It was because I'm getting all the Academy Award nomination tapes. And I watched the movie with Carey Mulligan, forgot the name already, damn it. Anyway, in the first act, I already knew it's a vendetta because her girlfriend got raped in the college. And I already knew. Fine. At least, I found it still interesting enough to see what she does about it. And the ending was somewhat surprising. So the movie's actually not bad, even though I figured out in the third act what her motivation is. I would have liked it better if I wouldn't have entirely figured it out in the third act and really not understand, you know, why she does what she does and why she's on this rampage and why she's doing these crazy things that seem to have no connection. So whenever you can create a character that confuses the shit out of you, the better it is. Because you make layers with these people. You make them real. You make them not, oh, they're all good and they do all good things. You make a good character do bad things. You need to have them make bad decisions. A really good example for that is the series The Search Party. These people are so notoriously doing the wrong thing, and they're doing it in a way that actually feels real because they're all, the way that the character is set up is so real in what they would do and how they would do this wrong that I'm buying all the nonsense that they pull off. I mean, everything they do is basically idiotic on some level, but because the characters are designed that way, I buy it. So what you want to make sure of, if you design a character that does stupid things or does idiotic things or goes off the rails, you need to make sure the character is designed as someone that would go off the rails. So don't, you know, create a character that goes off the rails and it is basically an accountant that usually wouldn't go off the rails. Or if he is an accountant that would go off the rails, it's because something else is going on that we learn about later. So that's okay too then. But what I'm trying to tell you is that every character has to have an arc that is surprising and is also satisfying. And satisfying means at the end, I want to have an ending where I feel as the audience that ending A makes sense to me. And it satisfies me, and it satisfies me only when the character journey, when their personal journey is one that elevates them at the end, meaning they become better people, they become rounder people. There's something on a personal level that happens with the character that satisfies me. That's just a character development. The plot, obviously, what happens in that movie has to satisfy me too, and the ending for that has to satisfy me. So there are two layers that you have to think about: the character layer and the development of the character, and then the plot, the actual plot. What's the movie about? What's happening here? But they're different plots. So you have to think about reading and writing and developing in these two layers of what happens on these two layers in connection all the time, also with the plot. So when you go and look at the interview that Paul did, Paul Golino, who wrote the sequence that drives the story forward, you'll notice that everything he talks about is every scene you write, every scene you read has to have its own little message, and it has to drive the story forward. If it doesn't drive the story forward, it's going to likely be edited out of the movie, and more importantly, you wasted money in shooting it in the first place. So your job as a producer and as a writer as well, as a creator, even a director, is to figure out, to read every scene and figure out what's the message of the scene. What am I learning from this one scene that I didn't know before? And do I need to know this or not? And do I need to know this here, or do I need to know it later? And do I need to know this in this way, or can I do it in a more simpler way? Or can I do it in a way that is less contrived and less having been seen that way? Another thing you have to do when you read a script, try to create scenes and dialogue and characters, but really scenes that don't resemble anything you've seen before. You can put a message that is simple, like he killed someone for this reason, into a scene that can be very imaginary, crazy, where you're like, okay, we're going to tell this message, but we're going to create this scene in a way that we're telling this message that hasn't been there before. So when you see movies that have the same plot, I mean, most of these movies are about someone gets killed, we need to know who it is, or it's an action movie, or it's a comedy, they get together in the end. Okay, they're all the same when it comes to the plot. It begins, we need to figure out what ends. But the way the story is told should feel like it's a new way of telling it, and the visuals we see should feel like we haven't seen this before. Everything needs to be fresh and new and innovative, even if the plots are usually the same, meaning killer, solution, murderer, we find out it is, or comedy or horror movies. They all have similar messages, of course, because they have a similar genre. But driving the audience through a maze of visually enticing images and dialogues we haven't heard before, characters that seem a little off, we haven't seen before, make it multifaceted. That's the idea of storytelling today. It's very important today. So the way you can ideally learn about this and educate yourself about is by watching all the stuff that's on streaming, and watching it with a consciousness that says, why am I connecting to this? And is there something that I'm seeing here that I feel like I have seen before? And then you judge yourself how this could be better, or why you like it because you haven't seen it before. And that will help you to create your own story and to make your own story unique and fresh and innovative, because that is why your story can sell. The main reason for these new ideas to come out, and you see what comes out these days, it's so, you know, I'm not even going to say it's high concept, it's just different. You know, this, I mean, just to get back to this example of the search party, it's basically 4 bored, maybe millennials, I don't even know if it's millennials or not, but 4 bored people living in a big city that don't know what to do with themselves, and they seem totally disconnected with life and what it means to them. They have no purpose, seemingly, and they have so many flaws. One is lying, one is basically having been taken advantage of herself all the time. The other one is just a floater who follows everyone else, and the last one just doesn't have a life and creates this whole story about this missing person. But what happens is all these people change, especially our lead character changes into someone, you know, following the Breaking Bad motto, that does weird stuff, going as far as killing a person. A normal person that basically was bored with her life ends up being a murderer, up even twice. And that is interesting. So when you look at these stories the way they're told today, even though the worlds created seem a little, how do I say, normal, for lack of a better word, we're taking out of the normality of this world and going into the extreme of what can happen with someone who lives a normal life. And that's what you want. You want to create something that is grounded in something that the audience can relate to first, and then you take them on a road of something that they don't see coming. They don't expect the character doing, and you go that all the way and without any, you know, stopping yourself in the imagination. And it's important, not just for writers, it's really important for producers to understand this concept to help your writer get there. So when you read a script or when you work on a project, and it doesn't matter what it is, documentary, short film, how do you call it, feature film, TV series, these concepts apply for all of them, simply because the audience today is very educated, and the executive producers that you're going to pitch to want something that is fresh, that can draw the audience in from a different point of view. So high concept means multi-layered ideas, meaning layer of the character, layer of the plot. Fresh idea means something that ideally from that angle has not been seen before. Innovative means when you tell the story, think about an innovative style of storytelling that has to do with camera angles, has to do with editing. Is it fast? Is it long? Am I holding my scene? Am I staying on the character? Am I showing them always close up, you know, wide? How do I work my styles? So think about that too. You definitely want to have surprising twists and turns. You want to, when you move them into a direction that's not predictable. And create characters that are inspiring and satisfying, as I mentioned earlier. Inspiring in a sense that you can relate to why they do this weird stuff. And you're like, oh my God, I didn't think that would actually happen, but oh my God, this is crazy. Can be inspiring too, but it can also be inspiring when someone has a hero story, overcomes a huge obstacle, and simply inspires you by how they overcome this obstacle and how they make it work. Erin Brockovich is a great example for that. And the characters, again, need to be satisfying in the end. The arc needs to be satisfying in the end. So when you read the script and you feel like in the end there's something missing, or you feel like, I'm not quite sure I'm liking this ending, and it's just more of an emotion that you feel, sometimes you can't even put your finger on it. And then you have to go inside and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What am I missing? And then figure out what could fill that. And when you create your story, or when you work on a story, you have to also think about very early who your audience is. So when you do a global story, obviously you're thinking about a mainstream audience globally. But let's say you do a movie for China, right? We have, you know, people in our class that do movies or content that is very much specified for the marketplace that they're in. They have to think about two things. They have to think about, how am I telling the story? It's probably not going to be a 90-minute movie. It might be longer, might be shorter. How do I adapt the storytelling to the audience and their taste buds in receiving my story structure? And what characters would they be able to relate to? And what, I'm going to get to you guys. I see 2 participants have raised their hands. Let me just finish this. And what is this defined audience going to mean for me financially? So when you do a movie in a local language area, you also have to think about, is it going to have the chops to leave the local language area? Like, is HBO going to buy this French movie or this Italian series, as we have seen happening? Or does it not have the global theme that could travel? Now, I don't know who raised their hands because I don't see it, but let me see here. You guys can just ask me. Whoever raised their hands can ask me. I don't know why am I supposed to this.
Hello.
Hi there. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. It was interesting that you mentioned about the selling on you know, like Asian audiences or because normally when I have several scripts that I want to sell, for example, in places like Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that Japan, I mean, at least they've mentioned me that it's really difficult to enter to the market in Japan. So in general, I don't know if you in specific know about that type of audience, if you or how is the Asian market in general?
Well, the Asian market is not something that I specialize in. So I will always be honest with you and tell you what I do know and don't know. But I think we did have someone earlier saying that they're working in that market. And I forgot who it was, but whoever that is, maybe they can quickly send us a chat so you can connect with them. I think it's good for you to work with people that are locally and that do that local content. And I know there was at least one person in our group that mentioned that that's what they're doing. So I forgot the name already, but I know there was someone in the later round of telling us what they're doing. So maybe when we look at the recording, you'll pick up their name and then contact them. I wouldn't know. I know that the Japanese market or the Asian market, what I'm having a hard time selling there is my comedies. What I have an easy time selling there is all my action thrillers and my sci-fis. So anything that is action seems to go easy. Drama is hit and miss, and comedy is hard. I can just tell you that from a producer of global content as to what I'm able to sell there and what I'm not selling there. So that's just my genre feedback. Hope that helps a little bit. There was someone else that had a hand up. Who was that? Did the hand disappear? Okay, no questions? Good, I'm continuing. So when we have the audience defined, so when we know, okay, we're going to do it for a film festival audience, or we're going to aim this, it's an art house movie. We know it's an art house movie. If we do an art house movie, we have to do it a certain way. Art house, same story principles apply. You do want to have a beginning, middle, and end of some sort. Now with the art house, you can obviously go a little overboard with giving us crazy story arcs and you know, making it artsy, for lack of a better word, but that doesn't excuse you from telling us a story that gives us a satisfying ending. When I watch an art house movie, that's usually what I struggle with. I just don't get them. And it might just be me, because I'm a very commercial storyteller and receiver, so I don't always do good with art house, but I have to say that some art house movies really touched me because they did have a satisfying ending. And even though the story arc was a little over the top for me, I still felt I could connect with the character, and I found it interesting enough to say, well, this is actually an interesting story, and I like the way they solved it. To me, an art house movie would be something like, I would say art house / leaning towards commercial was Parasite. Even though it, you know, turned out to be a hugely commercial movie. But to me, that goes a little bit in the direction of designed as an art house movie. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it wasn't designed as an art house movie, but it felt like that a little bit. And it went totally overboard, where I was like, really, everyone has to die? Sorry for those people who haven't seen it yet. Spoiler alert. And that went too far for me. I'm like, oh, come on. And even had a conversation with Jim about going, the movie was good until that point. and then the whole slashing and the blood and all that stuff. Anyway, didn't need to be that much, but you know, the Asians, they like their drama. There we go. Maybe that's what that is. But it was something that still in the end left me thinking about. There is a group of people that created a whole life around this kind of deceiving, and they live this whole world. And I found that fascinating. Never seen anything like it. So it still left me satisfying because I just found it interesting, what the world that was created. And the visuals were, of course, amazing. But that's the kind of stuff where even with art house movies, you think about what is the satisfaction at the end, even with this low budget movie. Now, when we talk about audience, we have to adapt our cost to the audience. So global driven movie, obviously driven by the value that's established with the sales estimates, can have more money spent on it versus an art house movie where maybe a sales agent will tell us, I have these and these and these markets for it, and here's what that's worth, translates into how much money I can spend on that movie. Documentary, same thing. Documentary feature, same thing. Television, same thing. It all depends on where can I sell this. Television series are very much driven by the domestic buyer. Their budgets are driven by what is the domestic network, what's the domestic streamer. If no one buys this in the US, it's going to be very hard to set this up. Unless you find a way to do pre-sales like we did with Baywatch, and then it does happen. It's harder now though, so just the time has changed a little bit on that. When we are talking about the pre-sales and the sales estimates, we already established in the last round that we want to hit a certain minimum from sales estimates out of the international marketplace. So international sales estimates, to repeat this again, is a projection provided by a sales agent who has the job of selling all the distribution rights on a piece of content. So if you're a producer and you have a movie, they will sell the rights on your behalf through the entire world outside of the US. Some sales agents do US, some don't. Now, when they give you estimates, it will not include the United States. It will only be showing you what the potential revenue would be outside of the United States. And if these sales estimates are below 70%, you have to start thinking about lowering your budget or replacing what you're missing with higher non-recourse finance sources. So if your sales estimates are not at 70%, but they're at 50% of your budget, you might have to shoot in a production incentive area that gives you at least 40% of your budget back, or at least 35, something to level this off. Just keep that in mind. Now, there is a way to create some buzz for a project that will actually elevate the value and helps even if the sales estimates are low. So let's say, for example, you work on a low budget movie, the sales estimates, they just suck. They're at 50%, which is not unusual for low budget movies because they're very hard to sell. And you now have to figure out to elevate the project in its awareness in the marketplace, because you can't lower the budget anymore. It's $1 million and you can't really save anymore, and you have to figure something out. One way of doing it is creating a buzz online through online marketing. We had someone here in the course that does that. It's a good person to maybe connect with that person, a good idea to connect with the person. The other one is when you do Kickstarter or GoFundMe campaigns, even if you don't raise any money, it will help you create a buzz. And that buzz, the awareness of your movie, people knowing about it, and you're creating a following for a movie that's about to be made, or a short that's about to be made, or a documentary that's about to be made. And there's a buzz there because you are out there trying to raise money, doing some marketing online. If you can point and pinpoint those eyeballs, that helps you elevate the value of your project. So that would be something that elevates it, for example, for a brand that would come in and say, okay, you have these many eyeballs because you did this Kickstarter campaign and people seem to like it, and you have all this following going on. We are now giving you some money for brand integration because we can see you're reaching eyeballs. So the creating of the buzz online specifically can help you create finance opportunities, especially in a case where the sales estimates are not covering the wanted 70 to 75% for international. Do you guys have any questions about this? Okay, then let me move on.
Hi, Jeanette.
Yeah?
Hi, Jeanette. This is Yoel. I had a question. So when we think about audiences, I think most people kind of broadly define that as, you know, a younger audience or older, or women, men. Do you have examples of how to define like a very detailed target audience that conveys the value of the project?
Right. So when I talk about target audience, I talk about mainly a market. So my target audience would mean global audience for bigger movies. If you want a movie to be seen all over the world, you are going for a global audience. Now within that global audience, you can go for an age group or a gender group. You can say, I'm going to make this thriller and it's geared towards people, female and male, 20 to 35, yeah, or young adult. When you do a young adult driven movie, it is a commercial, globally viable movie because that young adult audience is a mainstream audience. So when, or let's say you do like Twilight, right? The Twilight movies, that's a young adult driven audience. Harry Potter might be kids. I mean, I like Harry Potter and I'm 56, so there's that. I might be the exclusion to the rule. But there is an audience that you can define depending on your genre. So you can go and say it's mainly female. Like, for example, we're doing the television series Dog Masters. It's a reality TV show about people that own dogs that misbehave, right? Knowing from Dog Whisperer, which we did for 10 years, we know that our audience is mainly female because we've received the data. So we believe that Dog Masters will likely be majority female from 20 to 55, wide audience, but we kind of have the data already, so we know. So when you say I'm defining audience, you can do it two ways. You can say I'm making it for the festival audience, I'm making it for a global audience, or I'm making it for a local audience. And within that audience, I have my age group and my gender group. My product is geared toward a young adult, or my product is geared toward PG-13 or PG. It's a younger kids, it's family viewing, or it's wide, 20 to 45. You can decide that yourself, but you need to know who it is. So when you write something, create something, or read something, or produce something, you want to know, is it art house? Is it a location-driven movie, or is it global? And then within that, what is the age group and gender group I am gearing towards? So you need to kind of know what that is by reading it. And most of the time you can. I mean, if you read a script that has a lot of violence in it, it's likely going to be not, I think it's R-rated, I guess. It's not X-rated, sorry, R-rated. So you will see based on reading the script what the probably the specification will be, that the cinema, is it a motion picture, there is an agency that does the rating later when the movie's done. But from reading you will tell. You can also change it. So when you have an R-rated movie that you want to be more global, you have to take certain elements out. You're going to take a lot of when they drink a lot of alcohol, you have to maybe reduce that. There's a lot of blood and things and slashing and things. You want to reduce that. You can make a movie be having a wider audience by reducing certain things that you know would make it R. R makes it limited. On the one hand, R can be a sales push. People might say, oh, I'm going to watch this as an R movie. Ooh, it can be selly. But on the other hand, it could also be limiting from a buyer's perspective, because not every distributor likes to buy R-rated movies, because then it makes it harder for them to put them on the television networks. So it is often better to say, if I have something that is not necessarily going to be theatrically released, or I don't know if it's theatrically released, to not do R if you can. If that makes sense. It's a long-winded answer, but I hope you got what you needed. Joel, yeah? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about this?
Yeah, I have one question just regarding fundraising. It also kind of relates to then chain of title. You mentioned the idea of using a GoFundMe to fundraise for a film, and I've seen other young filmmakers do that as a primary fundraising effort. And I'm just curious if you would need to explicitly say then in your GoFundMe, that you have no rights to the subsequent film, just because I know when you're trying to sell a project or a completed film to a distributor, they might want to know the chain of title is intact and that you own all the rights. I'm curious if there's some gray area with GoFundMe, as it's typically a donation to your project. I'm wondering if there then needs to be subsequent rights forms filled out or made clear to those donating.
Okay, let me say this. When you do a GoFundMe campaign of a project that you are producing, Tucker, you need to own the rights. There is no gray area there. You have to have an option agreement with whoever owns the rights. because I think it's very dangerous for you to raise any money based on something that you don't control. When it comes to the investors, the people that give you the money, they don't have to write anything. There is no rights. There is no chain of title that goes on there. There is no, the only thing that happens there is they agree to the terms and conditions of the GoFundMe campaign terms and conditions, which you can lay out to a certain extent, I believe. So you can decide what do they get for the investment. And then that's something that you decide. So when someone says, I'm going to give you $10,000 and I want to have an associate producer credit, that's what I want. You can negotiate that. And then you would say to them, okay, I'll do a little agreement where I'm negotiating that and I will agree to that. Or someone says, I will only give you money if I get t-shirts. I mean, there are certain things that change hands against the financing that's given to you. But when it comes to a situation where someone invests with you, and it's a real investment, like an equity investment or even a loan. Now, someone can also just give you a loan, doesn't have to be a bank. Then you would do a proper finance agreement with them that specifies the terms and conditions of this investment/loan. Again, this would not have anything to do with the chain of title. The only time you deal with chain of title or property ownership is when you have a real equity investor saying to you, I want to be part of this project for the life of the project, and I want to be part of the ownership. In that case, you would create an LLC and you would issue interest memberships from the LLC that controls all the rights to this investor. So they become partners, they become real partners. So whatever you make in profits or whatever you generate with this LLC is going to be partially theirs, and you would have to share the profits with them in the percentage of the interest membership that you issue to them. And that interest membership relates to the amount that they give you. So if they give you a certain amount of the budget, that translates to whatever the ownership would be in the copyright. So these are different layers you want to know, but and we're talking about GoFundMe or Kickstarter, there are certain things you can set yourself, but you never give away rights, you never give away ownership, you never share the copyright for a Kickstarter or GoFundMe funding campaign. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. It's a fast question. It's a follow-up actually from Tucker. You can never expect to have a 100% funding on crowdfunding, right? I mean, it's not how can I say that? It's
visible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, who was calling me? Sorry about that. I don't know if you can have 100% funding through GoFundMe or Kickstarter. I know that you have to define a certain amount that you can raise on Kickstarter, and if you don't reach it, I don't think you get the money. I think GoFundMe is a little different, but you don't have to finance the entire budget. You can finance a portion of the budget, let's say. You don't, it's really, if I would use GoFundMe or Kickstarter, I would use it for two reasons: to create a buzz about the project, to make an awareness online, and to get some money for whatever I need. I would still try to go the normal route, because raising all the money through these campaigns, I think, is hard. I think if it's for a significant project that has to maybe have millions in budgets, smaller maybe, that might be more realistic, but bigger budgets, I think, is harder. Who else had a question?
Yeah, I had one. Janet, so how does all of this apply when, say, an European art house film has already been shot with no sales whatsoever?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that question. As you guys know, I'm from Germany, so I actually produce German language movies in Germany. So what you're saying, Alexei, is that if I produce a movie just for my country, how does that apply? What does the math look like? In that situation, you don't need sales estimates, because you're producing it for this market alone. What you then need to think about, who can I sell it in my market? Is this project something that let's say I produce it for Germany. Is it something that a German network will give me money for? Is it something that a German distributor will give me money for? Can I get local funding? Like in Germany, in many other countries in Europe, we have subsidy funding from the state that are supporting local language, cultural arts and media. So I can get a local state fund to apply to my project. And there are also local tax credits that I can apply. And there is local support for post-production. So in Europe, we do have the advantage that we can tap into various government boxes for funding, especially in combination with money that we get from a network and or from a distributor. But without that, it's going to be hard, because without that, you're going to have to get LOIs. When you do it yourself, let's say you have an investor that says, I'm going to do a French language movie and I don't have a network, you're going to need, I would try to get at least a letter of intent from a network or a distributor saying, I like the script. Once it's done, I would probably acquire it. I would want something in feedback from my local buyer that tells me that this story is something I can later sell. Now, what can happen if you do a French movie or German movie and it's commercial, like Netflix, Amazon, HBO Max, they buy foreign language content. So it could be, if it's a really good movie, that it's being sold outside of your country, even though it is local language. But you can't expect that to happen automatically. This is something that may or may not happen, but you can't say, okay, I'm going to just do that. HBO is going to buy it. I know. And that's how I'm going to finance it. I'm just going to know. Unless HBO Max gave you a letter of intent where they say we are likely going to buy this because we like the concept, and the local network gave you a letter saying the same, it's going to be hard for you to quantify the reality of what you're doing. So you need someone in the local market to give you some feedback that says this thing can be sold to someone in order to pay you back the money that has been used for the production. Does that make sense?
Would forwarding it count?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, would forwarding the movie in say your small hometown count as a way to provide that feedback that it can make money?
Well, if you're forwarding, you're basically renting the theater yourself and you're paying for it yourself, is what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's not really feedback. That's basically you saying, I'm not only going to pay for the movie that I don't know if anyone wants it, but I'm also going to release the movie that I don't know if anyone wants it and pay for that too. So now you're expanding your risk. You can forward the risk. You can forward to create value for a TV buyer. So let's say you say to the TV buyer, this is the script, and by the way, I'm going to release this on 100 screens in the territory that we're doing this for. The TV, and I'm going to pay for that. So there you know. So the TV buyer might say, oh, interesting. So it's actually going to be theatrically released. We find that interesting. It might elevate the want, meaning the local distributor, the local television network, to say, okay, if it's going to be a theatrical movie that you're forwarding, and maybe you can show us some box office, we might pay this based on this box office, or we might pay that based on that box office. They might go back to you and say, if you reach a certain number of ticket sales, we pay X amount. But you need someone who is not you or your investor to tell you what they will pay you for it, right? So some feedback is essential, but you can elevate the project's potential in relation to the feedback that you get by forwarding. So because you can say, I'm going to theatrically release this movie, and maybe hopefully you buy it because it's going to be a big success in my country and you better buy it. So you can have that conversation with the network buyer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Moving on.
One question.
Oh yeah, going on.
Yeah, I have one question, quick one for you about the writer's agreement. So for us screenwriters out there, I know that television can be easier to retain creative control for your characters and for your story. But for feature films, is there anything in a writer's agreement to kind of beware of in losing rights and losing creative control of your own story?
I'm actually going to go there next. Thank you for giving me the intro.
Perfect. Good segue then.
So, as you guys know, I'm always about practicality. So when we talk about working on our story, we want to make sure we have all our ducks in the row legally. So what Griffin is referring to, there are, of course, different agreements for different content. There is a writer's agreement for TV. There is a writer's agreement for documentary. Documentary is a little different. I'm going to get into that in a minute. There is a writer's agreement for feature, and there is a writer's agreement for TV. Let's start with that. Now, when you have let's start with television. When you have an idea for a TV show, you as a producer, like you, Griffin, you have an idea for a TV show and you wrote it down in a little treatment, and you're now talking to a writer about expanding this into a Bible and maybe writing a pilot. What you do first is you're going to go to the WGA website, the Writers Guild of America website, and you're going to register your idea with that treatment that you wrote. Anytime any one of you has an idea that they want to put in reality, you do exactly that. Write it down on a piece of paper. Doesn't matter how long the piece of paper is. The more detailed, the better. Write it down, register it. So now you control this idea, the end. Any writer you hire is going to be a writer for hire who will expand on your idea. They have no copyright, they have no right, and if you fire them tomorrow, there's nothing they can do. You have to obviously pay them for the script in order to use the script that they wrote for you. So that's something you need to think about. How much money are you going to pay them to write the script, and how are you going to pay it? But it's different than optioning an idea from a writer who wrote a script. So just know that whenever the idea comes from you, and it doesn't matter if you're a writer, an actor, producer, an investor, it doesn't matter who you are, just take a minute, write it on a piece of paper. The more detailed you can be in your imagination of what this should be on the screen, the better, and then register it with the WGA. It's $10 or $20, it's worth the money. And then the agreement is a writer for hire agreement. For the television, it would be, television series, it would be, dear writer, we're developing a Bible and you may or may not write the pilot. For the development of the Bible and for the writing of the Bible, I'll pay you X in these installments. And for this pilot script, I pay you Z in these installments. So you make the deal based on the service that you're getting. And obviously you're writing down delivery dates. I want the Bible by that day. I want the first draft of the pilot by that day. And I'm giving you more rewrites and they need to come by this date. So that's that. Rebecca, I'm going to get to you in a second. The second thing is when you have someone come to you with an idea, but they don't have a script yet. So let's say someone has optioned the book series and they own the rights to the book series and they want to make it into a TV show or a movie, it doesn't matter, but they don't have a writer yet. And they come to you and say, I want you to produce it. You then do a deal with them to obtain the rights that they obtained. That's the first thing you're going to do. Or if the rights that they have are about to expire, you go a step further to the originator that has the book series and do a deal with the originator directly. You can include the person that had the rights before in your agreement, but you don't have to, and it's a conversation that you have with them. But the cleaner way for you would be to go to the originator of the idea, the person that owns the books or the publisher that represents them, and do the rights with them. Now, if the person that comes to you already has the rights, you can also do the rights with them. But in that agreement, you would say, when they expire, you're giving me the right to go back to the original person, the writer that has the book series, to then take over the extension or to do my own agreement with them. You always want to be as close as possible to the source material, to the idea, if it's not your own. If the writer comes to you with a script that he wrote based on his idea, you now don't own the copyright unless you pay for the script later when it's done. The steps here would be you sign an option agreement which says, I'm optioning it for $5. When I buy the rights from you outright, which is when I'm producing this movie, I'm going to pay you a purchase price of $10,000 for the script. And I might give you 2% back-end profit participation because you're giving me a lower price. That's the deal. The minute you pay the purchase price, the rights become yours. You want to make a deal where you keep the rights in perpetuity, including all the sequel, remake, spin-off, all rights. So you control this the minute you pay the rights price forever without any issue. Many times what happens is that producers option a script and they only option it to make it into a feature film. Well, what if someone makes the same thing into a TV series? Now you're screwed. They option it and it has a character in there that becomes a great character for another movie. Now you're screwed. Or they option it and they didn't do the sequel rights. Now you're screwed. So you need to make sure that all rights related to this original idea that's driven by the writer who wrote it are going to transfer to you in this writing agreement. That really already starts with the option agreement. The option agreement includes all this. You're going to have a detailed purchase agreement later, but the option agreement is when you take a first conversation, a first meeting with the writer to say, I really like this script. I want to work on it with you. It's not quite there yet. I need to develop it further. I need you to give me some deal for rewriting it with me so I can get it made, and don't charge me for rewrites. But in general, I like to option it for $5. When we make it in a year, I'm going to give you $30,000. And if I can't make it in a year, you give me 2 extensions, each for a year, and we'll get it made that way. So the idea would be to not pay for many rewrites. If you do the rewrites, write them in the agreement. I want rewrites by this point. I want another rewrite by that point, put dates in it. So the more specific you can be already in that option agreement, the easier it's going to be in the entire process. Does that answer your question, Griffin?
Absolutely. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
good. The chain of title is something that has to do with the life of the project. So let's say you come and get a project, get the rights to a project that was owned by another producer before. Happens all the time. I've done this twice, and each time I had to learn my lesson. So there is a project that I did with Halle Berry where I optioned the rights. The book rights were basically optioned by me later because they fell out of the option with the original producer, so that was fine. So I could re-option them and rebuy them. But the script that was written already based on the book was also owned by a producer before me. And that producer had certain development costs. Now I need to know what those are, because these are turnaround fees, which means the producer who doesn't do the movie is now losing the rights, but he still spent money on it, and he wants me, that I'm now doing the movie, to pay for some or all of it. So I have to know the chain of title to figure out if someone before me owned this and if there is any money against it. Studios do this all the time. Studios develop stuff that they never make, but they spend money on it. And if I take over a studio project, now I'm dealing with $2 million of development costs. That's crazy. So I need to know from the writer, who optioned your script before me? Who are the producers that you worked with before me? Who is the studio? Who is the networks that you worked with before me? Is there any money that I need to know about? And you call everyone on that chain of title and say, you own this. Is there anything I need to know about? Are there any fees against this? Is there any development, any turnaround? You need to know this before you option it, because sometimes it's just too expensive. It happened to me that I had to say no because people didn't want to budge on the turnaround fees that were close to it. The other issue you have is something that was owned by someone else. In my case, the script was owned by this other person, this other producer, and this other producer, like I would have, did give development input. Comes time for me to make the movie. I pay the writer, I pay the rights, I do everything, I pay the turnaround, everything was done. And then the producer says to me, by the way, on page 5, that whole scene was written by me. That's my idea. Usually I would say, go take a hike. But because my movie was insured by a completion bond company who is very sensitive to my chain of title, they forced me to pay this guy for this little scene that he wrote 1,500 years ago in that script. And that was a $75,000 bill. Not fun. So when you do a script that you develop with your writer, and the writer has a wife, and the wife says, oh honey, I like the script that you wrote. How about you also put this theme in? And how about you also put that scene in? And maybe the female character should be doing this, that, and that. And then the writer mentions to you, by the way, I talked to my wife about this, and she feels, that's when you say, stop. Who is your wife? I want a waiver. A waiver that all the stuff that she comes up with, she's not going to ask for money for later. So she's going to have to write a rights waiver that gives you all the rights for her ideas that she's putting in. So you need to know from your writer, are you working with anyone else? Is someone giving you ideas that's going to haunt me later? Anyone you work with, you need to tell me. Otherwise, tell them all to zip it and not tell you anything. So you need to be very cognizant of anyone that touches your script at any time that says, oh, you know, maybe you do this. That's the moment when you say, here's a waiver, sign here. So these are the things about chain of title that people don't realize. But I have paid painful money for these things, and I can tell you they are very real. So I do this with all my writers. I'm working on a TV series right now that's based on a book series that are optioned. I'm working with a German writer, and his wife is a novel writer, and her ideas are semi-okay, and actually some of them are really good. And the first thing I did is I had her sign a waiver immediately. And of course, it was great because we're in the development phase. But can you imagine now I would have sold the idea already to Netflix, and that would have happened later. That might have been a problem because she would have said, oh, I want to be co-creator now. I want to, and a list of things that she wants. And she would have had to write to ask me, and I would have had to deal with it. Don't put yourself into that situation. That's why it's very important to look at the chain of title and to watch the development process very carefully. Any questions about this?
Yes, I had a question. I mean, you covered it a little bit, but it was more specific about registering your script.
Yeah.
So if you're developing a script from a like real life story, which you have the right for, like you talked to the person who lived it,
yeah.
And this person basically said, you have the right to develop this in a screen format of any kind for X time. So they give you like, if you develop it in like 10 years, then it's yours. If you don't, then it's not yours anymore. So if I do write a script about that, like I come up with the idea, I pay a writer to write it. Then if I register it, do I need to have rights in perpetuity to the life story in order to register it under my name?
No.
Or is it okay if I have it for a period of time?
Here's the thing with life rights. Obviously, it would be great if you can do a deal with that person to say, I want to make a movie about your life and I want those rights in perpetuity because I really believe in it, right? Maybe there's someone you know, and maybe they say to you, you know what, Rebecca, I think you're amazing. I will give you the rights in perpetuity to make a movie about my life. The reality is that's probably not going to happen, but it could. I mean, I've seen it happen, honestly. So the person might say to you, I'm going to give you the right to make a movie about me, but I'm going to have to, you're going to have this for 5 years. And after that, we're going to have to renegotiate. So what can happen is that it takes you longer, and you obviously want extension. So if it's a 5-year, you're going to extend it for another year, and then you give yourself another year to extend it again. So try to get at least at minimum 2 extensions if you can, so that you have time. But there's going to be an end to this. So you need to be aware of that this could happen. Well, there is a situation where if you pay for this upfront, if you pay for using the rights and you pay the full amount of this life rights story, then you are in the safe zone. You can literally buy this and then have it. But because it's sometimes so expensive to pay these full-on rights forever in perpetuity, the full price at the time you're working on a project, that's when you have to deal with option and timing periods. So the solution would be pay for the rights up front and then they're yours, or try to get the rights as long as you can. And by the time you make the movie, then they will be paid in full, and then you have them forever anyway, because they're connected now to the movie. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
There was a question
Yes,
here from Michelle. Hold on. Is there ever an instance where if only rights are available for future? Michelle, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, you had just said that normally if you can't get the rights, like for sequels and television series and things like that, I mean, obviously that's the ideal. You want to get all those rights. But is there ever an instance where it would be like, if you think it's a really good project and all you're able to get are just the rights for one feature film, that you would go forward with that, knowing that you can't get the other? But
yeah, you can, and I've done this. I've done rights deals where I didn't get the theatrical rights to make a movie. I only got the rights to doing a television movie or a television series. So I took it because that was okay for me. I knew I'm not going to go theatrical on it. And I've had situations where I knew I'm only going to make this one movie. I really don't care about sequels, prequels, blah, 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 blah. It really depends on what you want, right? If you just want to make that one movie with this one rights, that is fine. You don't have to put the whole package in. I have a tendency to ask for all I can get, and then I settle for what they give me. But the reality is, yes, you can just do the rights for this one movie. I actually did a deal with one writer where it was actually specified that I only had the rights to do a movie in Germany. So I didn't even have the rights to do it outside of Germany. So I would be able to sell the movie outside of Germany, but the script rights for making the movie were only limited to a German language movie. So someone could have taken the German movie, which by the way they did, and made an American movie out of it, which by the way they did. There was nothing I could do about it because I didn't have the rights. So that actually does happen as well, yes. I have a question about optioning. Crystal, go ahead.
Yes, if I'm interested in optioning, let's say a play into a screenplay that I write, I would obviously go to the playwright and option the play. In that option agreement, would there be we would settle on a price and a period, but then is there also something in there that says if I sell the screenplay within the option period, do I have to come up with a number of a price that I would need to then purchase the play later, or do I need to do that in advance?
The deal you would deal with the play, it would be structured similarly as any other deal you would do with a writer, other than the fact that the underlying rights now is a play. So you would do a deal where you say, I'm going to give you, playwriter, an option fee for X, and once I'm producing it, you're going to get a purchase price for the rights of Y. And then you basically include, obviously, the time that you have to come up with the purchase price and, you know, extensions, of course. So you get the option as long as you can, with the purchase price being as low as possible, with the option price being as low as possible, with the time for you to make the project as long as possible with as many extensions as you get. So a year is normal. A year they should always give you. Another 6 months based on that is also normal. Another 6 months last on that might be questionable, but could be possible. So aim for 1 year plus 2 extensions always, and just see what they come back with. It doesn't hurt to ask.
And I guess sometimes it's hard to know what the budget of that film is going to be. So would you need to put something in there that the purchase price is this, but if the film exceeds a certain budget, then they get 2%?
You can basically say, the estimated budget range is this, say it's $1 million, but if we make the budget if we make the movie for $2 million, the purchase price increases by this amount.
Okay, got it.
So you can make the purchase price in connection with the budget, if you have to, if they ask for that. If they don't ask for that, don't offer it up. But if they do ask for it, you can make a structure based on the budget. And we're going to talk about ranges in a minute of what you should be charging for what. Yeah.
Great. And a lawyer needs to sign off on this option agreement, or is this something I could do privately on my own, or is it just needs to be on paper?
I mean, option agreements are, they're standard. You can even download one an option agreement from the WGA website. You can download a purchase agreement from the WGX website. It doesn't hurt to have a lawyer look over it, honestly, just to be sure that you cover all your bases. But you can start with a template form from the Writers Code. They're not bad. I've used them.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mark Litwick does have a great book of contracts. I've actually worked with him, Arnold, and that's a good point. But it's also, sometimes projects can be very specific, and with all the new specifications we have today, and with streamers buying all the various rights, it is not a bad idea to have a lawyer just look at it to make sure one covers their butts.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are we good?
Hi, I have a micro question.
Yes.
So in the dark time situation, those money you extra paid, is it count to the contingency budget?
No, I had to put it in my development budget.
Oh, okay.
So I had to pay it out of the development cost, which was terrible because I basically had to find $75,000. I ended up paying it myself because I couldn't find anyone to cover it. And it was bad, honestly. It was not great. So not a good place, but it would come out of development because that's what it is. It's a development expense. Juan, you had a question?
Yeah, I didn't. I'm sorry for asking so many questions. It's just one fast question. I was curious about if you say that it's great to have the rights and put the rights on the WGA. Do we have to also put the rights on the LA Department of Rights too, like for unpublished?
You can do Copyright Office. You can go and register with the Copyright Office if you want. I do that when I have more evolved works where I wrote already a lot. Like I wrote a whole Bible for a TV series, and that I did with the Copyright Office as well as the WGA. But you can start with the WGA because you're protected just based on your idea. You can do both. I mean, I think the Copyright Office is $10 or something. It's all good. You can do both.
I see. Okay.
So when we talk about creating value for a project, we had a conversation last time to say that, yes, obviously the genres is important. We want to create a genre that people actually want to see. But we also need to talk about how do we get the director and the actor attached. And many times the situation that you're facing is that you have a great script, but you just have a great script. So now you have to think about who could be my director, who could be my actor, and how do I get them attached? The first thing to think about is that it has to be a story strong enough for you to get a director attached that has some kind of notoriety in the vein of what you're doing. So you research, you find someone that fits, that has done something similar, ideally someone who's not doing this for the first time, because as a producer who starts out, combining forces with a first-time director is not going to be the greatest start. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's going to be harder to realize it. The same with actors. If you have a project, you're a first-time producer, you have a first-time director, and you have an unknown lead, very hard to get these made. Again, there are exceptions to the rules. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it is harder to do. To me, if someone starts out a career, I think to use the path of less resistance, to just show a credit and start your career would be advisable. That's just my personal opinion, and you can take it or leave it. But I think you want to get shit done. That's the rule. So that people get aware of what your taste buds are, what you're willing to do, and you have something to show for. After that, you can do first-time director, you can first-time producer, you can do first-time anything. But try to, in the beginning when you start off, to combine forces with people that have done stuff before. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. When you attach the director, you give him the script. You're not telling him anything about your vision. Don't tell him. Let them read the script, let them come back to you and say, here's what I think this should look like. And then you sit in with yourself and you ask yourself, am I seeing what he's seeing, what he or she is seeing? Is this vision that the director is issuing or sharing with me, does it resonate with me? If it doesn't resonate with you at all, find someone else. If it resonates with you somewhat, ask questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because my vision was X. What do you think about my vision? Then you start sharing your vision with them and see how they react. If they hate it, most of it, find another director. If they like what you're thinking, the partnership can begin. If you talk to a director and you have your vision and they have their vision, and all of a sudden their vision is different than yours, but it's actually elevating the project and you just didn't think of it, that's also a good director to hire. Just be sure in the beginning that you know there is a creative connection, because if you don't have that creative connection, this thing is going to derail. I'll promise you it's not going to work. So having this conversation with the director early on about their vision before you share yours is a very essential first step. That includes cast. Who do you see? You don't tell them who you see. You don't tell them who you want. Let them tell you who they see in the lead. It's really just the lead, and then the rest will fall into place. Who do they see? Do they see someone who's older? Do they see someone who's younger? Do they see someone who looks totally different? Do you see someone who's like not at all who you want to see? Problem, red flag. If they see someone you didn't think about that actually also works, that's okay. And if they say, well, I haven't really thought about cast, who do you see? Then you can say, well, here's the kind of cast I see. And then see what they say. Get the feedback. They say, well, I really hate it. Move on. Or they say, well, that's a good idea, but I also could think of so, and you like, stay with that person. Make a deal with the director that you can fire him if the cast doesn't want him, because you have to. You might be able to get, like in my case, a Halle Berry for a movie, and then you have a director who's on the project already that she doesn't like. But you want to keep Halle Berry, you can kick the director off the project because the director doesn't have the value. Halle Berry is your value. So then you have a director deal where you say, if the cast that we're going to attach does not approve you, I have the right to terminate this agreement. Very important. You might have to pay him $1 or $2, but you need to be able to fire the director if you have to, because the cast will likely have the higher and most important value for you. And that's why you want to spend your money. Now, when the cast comes on board, they want to know who the director is. So to get the cast on board before you have the director is not going to do any good for you. They can come to you and say, well, I'm going to see this person or that person. That's okay. But it doesn't really do much. And especially with the agents. Agencies want to know, okay, we got the script, like the script, who's directing? They want to know who you have. So it is important for you to have the director first and then go with the director to try to attach the cast. The cast, you're not going to use a pay and play offer. You're going to use a pay or play offer, because you need to be able to replace the cast as well. If for whatever reason thing doesn't happen, shit hits the fan, something goes, you need to be able to get out of that agreement. The pay or play offer has to be subject to the closing of your completion bond. That's your out. Because a completion bond that ensures the on-time and on-budget production of your project will not happen if you don't have the money, because you don't have the money to do the movie in the first place. So that's going to be a legal out. Now, some agents, you know, they get it, but there are a lot of agents that don't even know what that means. So this is a little safety net for you to just put in a little sentence saying this deal is subject to the closing of the completion bond. And you can explain when the talent agent asks you, why is that sentence in there, subject to the completion bond? What does that mean? It means your actor is going to have to be bondable. They have to be healthy, they have to be fit for the part, and they have to be insurable. If they take drugs, I can't insure them. If they're not healthy for the role, there's nothing I can do. So put it on that. Just say, we need the actor to be bondable. That's why we need a completion bond on the project. And that's not really something that an agent can fight with you over, because they know the actor has to be living up to the part, and they have to be healthy, and they can't be drugged and out of their minds when they show up on set. So that's a good way for you to explain that little sentence. What you don't want to do in reality is really then not do that movie, because you're going to be marked as someone who makes offers and doesn't really pull them through. So it is a legal out for you not to be liable to pay an actor $1 million and the movie doesn't get made. Okay, but it is going to leave a bad mark for you as a producer if you actually do this. I've never done this. I've always been able to back my pay or play offers and get the movies made, because I work with investors and make sure that everything works out. It is something though for you to know, if all fails, you're not going to lose your shoes and your house and your everything. But it's not something you should be going for. So be careful and be mindful of that. When we look at budgets and our story and our sales estimates and our above the line numbers and our below the line numbers, which are for the above the line is your cast, your director, your producer, your development. Below the line is the actual physical production and post-production. You look at these numbers and you look at them in a certain balance. And the first balance that we talked about early on was the budget needs to be standing in balance with, trying to get the next one here. Now my thing is not, the budget kind of needs to stand in balance with what we're doing. Now what we're doing is driving this. So when you look at my budget line item sheets, it's really depending on and subject to the kind of project you're doing. So this is just a very, 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 very basic range. It could be very different for you depending on what you're doing. So don't take it too literal, but it's a range that you can apply and you're not gonna fall off the rails if you kind of stay within that range. Now the above the line range of 20 to 50% is pretty vague, right? I mean, seriously, I only use above the line that is very high if I have if my project is driven by cast. That is where I spend my money. And usually all the movies I've done were driven by cast. So most of my money went to cast salaries because the movies as I do are globally viable. They're usually not Academy Award winning projects where an actor would agree to do it for less because they have a potential to get an Academy Award. The movies I've done are usually just structured in a way that investors and me, the producer, can make money. That was the goal for me. That doesn't have to be the goal for you. You can make a movie that's a low budget movie that you are doing, that you've geared towards an Art House Academy Award kind of situation. And that way your actor might agree to do it for less because they're really enticed by the role and they really believe that this could be an Academy Award winning project. But most of the time, if you have an A-level actor, it's gonna cost you. And it's worth spending your money on. That's the one element where I tell you, don't, I mean, you negotiate, obviously you're not gonna pay through the nose, but this is where you pay money, and that's okay because it's gonna make your life so much easier in every level, on every step. So spending a large salary on an actor that elevates your project is okay. The below the line is where you look carefully. Again, it starts with your script. Eliminate all the scenes that don't drive your script forward, because that eliminates your shooting schedule, and your shooting schedule is going to be shorter, which means less money to spend. In the end of the day, that script that you're creating is going to be broken down in what is called a shooting schedule, and that shooting schedule tells you how many scenes you shoot per day. And then after you put all the days that you're shooting the scenes together, you figure out, oh, okay, I'm going to shoot this thing for 3 weeks, or I'm going to shoot this thing for 4 weeks. That means 80 people on set every day for 4 weeks. If you do 80 people on set for 3 weeks, all of a sudden it gets cheaper. If you put 80 people on set for 2 weeks, all of a sudden it gets cheaper. So that's what you have to remember. Yeah, that's fine. Guys, if you need to go, you can drop off. I'm just seeing people like, it's going to take forever. Yeah, it's taking a little longer today. I apologize, but I promise we'll be done in a minute. You guys can watch the recording later. So anyone who needs to go, feel free to go. So these below the line aspects are very much driven by your script. This is where you can manage and organize yourself by looking at your script very carefully. When you look at post-production, it's usually about 1/3 of the budget or less, but it is driven by how many visual effects do you have. We had some animators in the group here and they know this is expensive. If you don't have visual effects, you're going to be okay with probably about 1/3, 10 to 30% max. If you do have visual effects, the post-production budget is going to go up. When we talk about rights and development, you're looking somewhere between 1 to 4% of your budget. That includes your purchase rights fee, that includes your development cost. If you're looking at what producers are getting and what the production company is getting as an overhead fee, you're anywhere between 3 and 15% depending on how many producers you have. because this section includes all the producers, not just your salary. The marketing and publicity here is meant for marketing and publicity that the sales agent is going to need. So if they want to go to the Cannes Film Festival, to the Berlin Film Festival, they need a trailer, they need a poster, they're going to ask you for money. Here's where you budget that. Usually 1 to 3% of your budget. Insurance and completion bond, if you are a bondable producer, it's going to be lower. If you're a first-time producer, it's going to be higher. If we're in COVID, it's going to be higher, because this is where the COVID components and insurance situations are coming in. So this could go up a little bit. For the completion bond company itself, you should not be paying more than 2.5 to 3%. If you do pay anywhere between 2 and 3%, agree with the completion bond company to give you money back, maybe 0.5% of the premium that you paid, if you are staying within the budget ranges. So you can get money back from them. If they charge you 3%, say, good, but I want some money back if I'm staying within my budget. If I go over, okay, then all bets are off. But if I'm staying within my budget and don't exceed the budget, I want the premium to come back to me. Legal and finance obviously depends on who your lawyer is, what deal you do. You can do a deal with the lawyer on a project where the lawyer says, I'm going to give you a flat fee handling your project. I'm going to do all the crew deals. I'm going to do all the finance deals. I'm going to do all the distribution deals. I'm going to do everything for you for $20,000 or so, throwing a number in the room. You can do that deal, and that would be a great deal. Many lawyers say, screw you, give me a retainer and an hourly. Not great. And I've ended up paying a lot of hundreds of thousands of dollars because I'm an idiot and hired loop and did exactly that. Not something I would repeat. So try to get a law firm to understand you're doing this for the first time. You cannot burden your budget with legal fees like that. Same for finance fees. When your investor comes in or your tax credit lender comes in, subsidy lender comes in, all these people want to get money. Try to negotiate deals with them where you say, don't charge the finance fee. Don't make me burden the budget with your finance fee. Take it off whatever you give me, or do something, defer it, or do something. Try to keep the finance fees as low as you can. Legal and finance fees should never be more than 10% of your budget combined. Contingency is a conversation that you're going to have with the bond company if you have a bond company, which you will have if you have bank. If you have bank financing, there's a completion bond, no doubt about it. Now, the completion bond is going to ask you likely for 10% contingency, and your job is to negotiate that down. I've seen it as low as 5%, so it is in the realm of possibility, but it has to do very much with your director, the way they are going to get along with the completion bond company on how they want to do each scene. It has to do with your line producer who's running the show, which should be a bondable line producer, someone that they like and that they're okay with. When I say they, I mean the completion bond company, and that will help you to reduce your contingency. Any questions on this? Come on, people. What is this? My computer is not doing it. Hold on a second. We did this. Oh, sales agents. We talked about
Janet,
yeah.
I'd like to talk about creating value, bringing on more experienced producers on your project. Yeah. What are they getting out of it, and what's kind of the structure in bringing in multiple producers? Like, what's the
multiple is bad. One is good. Whenever I get a project that has more than 2 producers, I'm already seeing my hair fall out. Producers are baggage. So you really only want to bring a producer that actually brings something to you, and the agreement should specify that. If you have a casting director that you don't pay and they want a co-producing credit and they will help in your package, you can say, okay, you get a co-producing credit for helping me package, and you're going to package this actor. Be specific. You're going to get a casting fee and a small producing fee. The end. If it's a producer who has cast relationships, the same applies. You're going to help me package this actor. It's going to be a co-producing agreement. You're going to get a co-producing credit and you're going to get a fee. Specify what it is they do. Then you can create value. If you just say, oh, you're going to be a co-producer and hopefully you'll get me something like money or cast, not good. If it is someone who gets you money, the agreement is you're going to be a producer with me. They'll likely want to be a producer or executive producer, and you get paid this fee subject to you bringing me this amount at minimum by this time. Again, specify exactly how much it is by when it has to be brought to you. If it's someone who has distribution deals, specify where you want to go with the project, pay them only if they bring the deal in, if the deal is closed. So those deals are subject to deals. You don't ever do a deal where you say, let's produce this movie together and see how it goes. ever. You only do a deal where it specifies the role of the producer exactly and when they paid based on exactly what delivery. That's the deals you do. The least producers you have, the better it is. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
And
cool.
So following up on this, is
Yeah.
it possible that like an executive producer who's more experienced asks for a back-end point? Like,
Yes.
is that normal? Is that something you should be
That's
giving
fine.
out?
Yes,
Okay.
because they will likely ask for profit participation because you're likely not going to be able to pay them a lot of money if it's a smaller project. So they'll say, I want 10 points, 5 points, whatever. I want half of what you get. You know, they ask for something. But you always can say, listen, what I get, I share with you. You know, if you really help me getting this made, I'll share the goods with you. And that's okay. So they become partners in crime with you. And that's fine. If they really help you get it made, then that's a good deal to make. But even there, specify what you expect them to do, what you need help with, and what you want to pay them out of the budget and later in points. So it really has to do with what is it that you want them for, and write that down, right?
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, Jed. We'll see you next time. Yes, bye, Erin. So we also need to figure out if we want to get something on screen, how do we deal with, what do people want? What can we get them? How do we not bore them? So when we talk about a sales agent, what they like is usually, first of all, you're going to choose a sales agent that has similar projects in their lineup, and you're going to choose a sales agent who doesn't have too many projects per film market that they go to. If you have a sales agent and they go to with 10 projects to the Cannes Film Festival, yours being one of them, you already lost. If that sales agent goes to Cannes Film Festival with 5 projects, you're one of them, that's okay. That's something to remember. So ask them, how many projects are you going to take to the markets? It's a question they can answer to you. What they want from you is they want to have a project that has cast and director attached. They want to know how much money you're spending on it so that they have a range for the budget. They need this. They cannot do any pre-sales unless you have a director and cast. It's impossible. The agreement should be a sales agreement. We talked about it. It is not a distribution agreement unless they pay something. If they pay in advance, you can do a distribution agreement. Otherwise, it's a sales agreement. That's an agency agreement. They only get paid on sales they made for you. They only get paid on distribution deals they realized for you. Distributors is a little different. That's a buyer like a network, a streamer, a theatrical distributor. They actually buy rights from you. They also need a script, a package, a budget. They want to know what they're buying. They're not just buying a script when they buy a license. And then they want to know how much you want for the territory that they're buying for. Germany usually pays between 8 and 10%. England usually pays between 5 and 7% of the budget. There are ranges for these people, what they're paying. US can be anywhere from 5 to 50% of the budget. Sometimes they pay the entire budget. So US is all over the place. So there are different ranges of what they're paying, and these ranges are obviously established in the sales estimates. But these distributors, they do need to see that you have a package. Otherwise, they don't know what to do. When it comes to TV series, they need you to have a showrunner. Otherwise, again, they don't know how to quantify what they're buying. The elements for financing can consist distribution deals. So for example, if you go to a studio or a network station or a streamer and you do what is called a split rights deal, that can become a financing component for you because they take a split of the rights, which in this case might be the US. They own the US in perpetuity, they pay you 50% of your budget and you're off to the races. You can take that deal and you can get it financed by a bank, or you can tell the distributor, I need you to pay this 50% up front so we do a proper co-production. Both is in the realm of reality. So just keep in mind these split rights deals are a real co-production opportunity for you to enter into, especially when it comes to television series where you have a showrunner already. You are going to obviously always use some kind of non-recourse financing like subsidies, tax credits, music investments, brand integration, anything you don't have to pay back. You're always going to keep your eye out for because it's an important element of your finance plan, and you already learned equity and a loan is something you can do. Now, the way to get to these distributors is obviously you can use talent agencies. You can go to a talent agency and say, hi, CAA, I have a project, I have this director, this is my script, and this is my actors. I want you to go out to domestic buyers and see if someone bites. Can you do that? And they might do that, and they'll charge you between 5 and 25% of whatever the domestic buyer takes. They will also do that if it's a finished movie that is being sold to the US. So that's kind of what talent agencies do. talent agencies are CAA, ICM, UTA, the Gersh agency. Those kind of agencies take on projects like that and represent them in the US. The co-production partners, so let's say you do a movie in Germany and it's an American movie and you do it with a local co-production partner, which is great because you can get subsidies and so forth. They might have fantastic relationships with a German buyer. Use that, because anytime you have a local co-production company, they will likely get more money out of their territory than your sales agent can get and you can get. So that's kind of a pre-sale that you can optimize by having co-production partners that are local in the territories that you want to sell to and that you're going to shoot in. So that's another way to get to a distributor by yourself using a co-production partner. Any questions on this?
I had a question on selling to international distributors. Since like countries like Spain, Italy, maybe Germany too, they dub a lot of their films, is it helpful to have that budgeted in when you go to pre-sale, or is that something they do care? They would
actually, that's something that is part of the delivery elements that will be requested either by your sales agent or you have to pay for later. The dubbing is usually done by the local buyer because they have local, studios that they do it. That's my experience. In some cases you pay for it, in some cases you don't. But let's say you pay for a Spanish dub. You can use that if you do it once, and let's say Brazil buys it, they want a Spanish dub, or Spain, let's say Spain, it's easier, Spain buys it, they want a Spanish dub. There are other Spanish-speaking countries that might want this. So now you can sell the dub that you paid for Spain to the other Spanish-speaking countries. And can say, it's already dubbed in Spain, give me X amount, and now you can basically make the money back for the dub that you had to pay for. If it's not part of the delivery elements that the sales agents will ask you to generate, and then it would be in your budget, it is something that you have to pay for later, but it's a negotiable thing.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Thank you.
So when we talk about risks, we already talked about story target. You want to make sure you know what you're doing. We talked about the budget and the sales estimates. You want to have a budget that corresponds with sales estimates. You want to understand what your buyer and distributor wants. Talked about this, but now let's talk about what the risks are for the investor and producer, depending on what they give you. When an investor gives you development financing, and this happens, usually it's a producer's job to pay for development, right? But sometimes you have an investor that says, hey, I want to create projects with you. I'm going to give you money for development. The way that works is that this investor would be paid back at the moment you're starting your production, the moment of closing of the financing. And I think I mentioned this last time. Development financiers are part of the development budget, and their premium is also part of the development budget. So their risk is slightly reduced on that sense, because they get paid when you start producing, and before the movie is even made. When you start producing, the thing is closed, you have all the money. The development investor gets back their money plus the 20% premium. That's what they get. You might give them a few points in the back, but it's not as much as a production investor would get. So they get paid pretty early on when you start your production. So their risk is you never make it. You'll never make the thing. And in that case, what they spend becomes part of the turnaround. So if you never make the movie and you lose the rights, and then another producer makes the movie, that investment that this investor did would then be part of what this other producer that comes after you would have to pay for. So it's not entirely lost, but it is important for the investor to understand that their investment for development is connected to the IP and will stay with the IP. It doesn't mean that they'll get the full amount, doesn't mean that they get the 20%, but there is some recourse for them that is connected to the IP, which makes them often feel more comfortable when they give you development financing. So you can tell them, even if I don't get it made, if the guy after me gets it made, you get your money back, or at least some of it. I don't know how much, because it depends on the next producer doing the negotiation with you. And so in that part, you kind of decide how much money you'll get back. But it is connected to the IP and will stay connected to the IP. The production investor is connected to the production budget and to the project itself, because they become membership interest owners in the LLC. And with that, they become also part of the IP. Now, their investment is usually higher, and therefore their reward should also be higher. So they are paid when you produce and sell your movie from the profits, and of course they're going to get repaid through the collection agent. It is your job for any of these investors to always make sure you have a healthy balance in your finance plan. That's your fiduciary duty. It's a legal thing, so it's very important you don't screw around with that. It is your fiduciary duty when you take money from someone to optimize your finance plan. You cannot unknow what you just learned in my course, unfortunately. So you have to be sure to balance these finance elements the best you can to reduce the investor's risks. And your job is to find non-recoupable financing somewhere, somehow, to include that, to ideally get a bank loan if you can, and to see if you can get some pre-sales established. That's your job. If you cannot do it, you need to tell the investor, I can't do this, and give them an explanation that hopefully makes sense if you can't do it, and then but you need to be clear about it, and they have to be okay with you not being able to do this. And you have to put all of this in writing, because you don't want the investor to come later and sue you and say, you did not do your fiduciary duty, you did not do the pre-sale, you did not do this, you did not do that, and that's what you were supposed to be doing because you're supposed to know all this stuff. So if you change course on anything, always make sure you have that in writing and have the investor sign off on all the milestones that you're taking, because you don't want to be sued later. It happens all the time. Any questions on this? Okay, it's freezing on me here. Why? Okay, we talked a little bit about what that finance plan looks like. Your estimates, your projected revenues from international distribution should be at minimum 70% of your budget. 70 to 75% should be the minimum that you can receive per what the sales agent is telling you. Of that, a minimum of 30 to 35% should be established in pre-sales if possible, unless you have higher subsidies or other non-recoupable finance sources that can offset this. But I can tell you, if you want a loan from a bank that is a gap loan, an unsecured loan based on what you're still selling, you will need these pre-sales, because otherwise the bank will not give you a gap loan. The gap loan is what a bank will give you based on all the rights you haven't sold yet. The pre-sales are, let's say, 30% of the 75%, and then you still have left 40% that you haven't sold. Based on that, the bank will give you 20%. So half of whatever you have left is what the bank will give you, up to 20% of the budget. Again, they require pre-sales in order for them to verify and quantify that the reality of these unsold rights being sold in a similar level is actually there. That's why the bank wants to know. You can add something called mezzanine. Mezzanine is basically a in-between thing between a loan and an equity investor. It is a loan per its definition, but it is a loan that can also charge a premium and that can also ask for profit participation points, but not ownership in the IP. So you might have to throw some profits at them. You might have to give them a little premium, and they might even charge a little interest. But it's not an equity loan in the sense that you're sharing membership interest in your LLC with them. That you only do with equity. Equity should not be more than 35% in this scenario, but if you don't get a gap loan, it can be 55%. And then you're still okay, and the risk for the investor is not changing because you're just having them take over the bank position, and they're recouping behind the bank anyway. So all is well there. If you do shoot in a tax incentivized region or a subsidy region, make sure you shoot somewhere where you can at least quantify 20% of your budget. That will give you a healthy base for whatever you do. If it's less than that, offset it with branding or anything else that you can get to beef that up. Just make sure that somewhere, somehow you make 20% of non-recoupable financing somewhere in your budget. If you can hit the 20% with a mix of crowdfunding, brand integration, in-kind services, and subsidies, if you don't get just the subsidies, you're in an okay position. So that's kind of the summary for this. I want to run you through one little case study. It's going to be quick, but I do want you to look at this. I did do a project where I'm pretending I'm producing a $5 million film and I'm investing it. I basically have an investor give me 100% of the financing. That's what I do. Investor gives me $5 million and I go make the movie and I say, yay, I make the movie. I don't have to run around chasing financing sources. Now in this little thing, and let me see if I can maybe move the Excel up so you can see it better. 1 second here. Let me move this in the frame. Oh, my thing is being so stupid. Moment. Can you see the Excel sheet? Is the Excel sheet showing up on your screen?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you see here, case A, 100% equity. You see the budget is covered. He pays for everything. We're assuming that we're going to get 75% in international distribution revenues. That's what we told your investor. Thanks for giving us 5 million. We're thinking we're going to get 75% out of foreign. We're also thinking we're going to get 35% for domestic. We go in the middle here. We have to tell the investor something, so that's what we're thinking. So we're thinking, dear investor, we're going to make 5.5 million on this movie. It's not great, but you know, it's the minimum. Investors know equity. Okay, we'll probably get more, but you say worst case scenario, we're going to make 5.5 million on the $5 million movie. On the surface, doesn't look so bad. I mean, it's not like 20% premium, but it doesn't look bad, right? So here we have no pre-sales. We have no cash flow. We have none of this. None of this is there. Investor changes. He just pays. Now here's what it looks like in the recoupment. He paid $5 million, right? We're going to get off 5.5 million. We're actually receiving this. So now we have to pay people. We pay the collection agent 1% of whatever we're getting, 55,000. We pay the sales agent 16% because sales agent wants to get paid for making all the sales that he does. It's 880,000. And we now have to pay back our investor the $5 million. Look what happens. We're losing $435,000 just by applying the usual nonsense. Let's imagine we do the same movie, but we are applying the finance sources we just learned about. So here's that movie. We put again 5 million bucks, same assumption for the revenues. And now we're doing what we said we would do. We would get pre-sales for 35%. We get the pre-sale distributors to give us a 20% down payment, which we can use for our finance plans. So 20% of our pre-sales are coming in at 350,000. We're doing a bank loan for the pre-sales. Here's the bank loan of the pre-sales, 1.75. We're imagining the bank's not deducting anything, just for easy reference. Of course, they're deducting the down payment because we already got this. So we have a bank loan here. We get a gap loan of 20%. Hallelujah, $1 million. So we get a $2.4 million bank loan from the bank, including the gap and the pre-sales. And we are also shooting in a tax incentive region where we get 20% of our budget, $1 million. All of this, it basically makes our equity lower down to 25% instead of 100%, right? Because we're using all the stuff that we just learned about. Pre-sales, gap loan, and the equity, and the production incentives. Let's see what the same movie looks like when we recoup this. So again, we get our 5 million here. Same math applies. We're selling it, the same movie to the same people. Everyone's the same. We're now paying the same people. We're paying the collection agent. We're paying the sales agent. We're paying the bank loan back. We're paying the equity back. We're paying the premium back. And we're making $375,000. Same movie, same everything. And we're just slicing it up in financing pieces that we learned about. This is how important it is to understand the balance of your finance plan. Any questions? Good.
I have a question on the gap loan. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
asking a lot of questions today.
No, please
is
do.
it normal for the gap loan to be interest-free? Like,
No,
because in
honey.
all these
Rebecca,
scenarios,
no,
they're not calculated. Yeah, exactly.
No. You're going to learn in the upcoming modules very much that you have to pay interest and very much that you have to pay a loan fee and very much that there's all kinds of other stuff going on. This is just a simplified example to show you how the profit changes just by changing the elements you're using to pay for your production. That's all it does. This is not,
that's very clear. Okay.
Because in reality, the bank will take the pre-sale agreement, it will discount it. In reality, it will charge an interest for the pre-sales and for the gap loan. And there are two different interest rates because one is more than the other, because one is more risk than the other. You'll learn about the interest fees. You'll learn about all that as you're going forward, but you're only in week 3. So that's why I'm not bombarding you with this. But in
this, it seems too good to be true.
There's nothing too good to be true. Trust me. In module 4, that's exactly what's going to happen. You'll learn about all of it. You learn about that the subsidies are only used for certain budget elements, not the entire budget. You learn about the fact that you have to pay the subsidy lender some money. You learn about all of this. So the fees associated to your sources will be applicable in module 4, and you will do a case study that represents that. But for this exercise today, I only wanted to show you the importance of balancing your finance plan as your fiduciary duty to an investor. Does that make sense? Because your job is to reduce risk. That's your job.
Very clear.
Right?
Yeah, that's very clear, and it's very helpful, actually.
Great.
So, yeah.
There was a
Great,
question
thank you.
here. Rebecca, you said, oh, the dubbing, we talked about this.
Yeah, I already
All right.
asked that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
sorry, I'm just reading the chat here. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have another question, Jeanette. So,
Great.
do you have a case study for a non-union shoot, and is a non-union shoot likely to get pre-sales internationally?
Very good question. If it's a non-union or union shoot, doesn't matter, the rules are the same. However, if you do a non-union shoot, your budget obviously can be lower because you're not using union. Just make sure that you are allowed to do a non-union shoot, because if you're shooting in Los Angeles, New York, or anywhere else where there's unions, they'll be all over you like a rash, and they will shut you down if you don't watch it. If you do non-union, it really specifies in these areas where you can do this. So make sure that you talk to the unions and say, I'm going to do this movie, it's only $500,000, and I'm not planning on union in union. I'm not doing WGA, I'm not doing DGA, I'm not even doing SAG. The actor is a no-name actor that's not SAG. Then you're okay doing this. And then your movie is going to be small, and that's okay. You still want to get some pre-sales. You still want to try to get something done. The likelihood of the finance plan to give you 75% sales agent estimates is lower because your value is lower. So you probably end up more with like half. So you need to figure out where you shoot to maybe offset what you're not getting. So there is going to be maybe some pre-sales. It's definitely going to be lower sales estimates, and it's definitely going to be other finance sources that you have to come up to balance that out. But the rules are still the same. You need to think about, how am I limiting my investors' risk by balancing out the stuff that I don't have? If I only have 50% sales estimates, how do I balance this? Am I going to get a brand integration that's going to pick up that other 20% that I don't have? Am I maybe getting some music investor coming in? Am I getting some deferments? Can some people defer their rates? You know, is my budget going to get lower because I can defer my DP, or maybe my director doesn't charge me, or none of the producers are charging me? Those are the things you can work with to optimize that kind of finance plan. But make sure that when you do non-union, you're truly non-union. The option you have here, just so you know, is you can call IATSE in the US and can say, I'm doing a $1 million movie, I need you to give me lower rates. They do that. They do special rates for you. I think we talked about it last time. If you tell them, I'm going to do lots of, I'm going to do a whole bunch of low budget movies, give me an overall rate deal for my next 5 movies to be low budget, under $1 million, what can I do? Lower the union rates for me. They'll do that deal with you, but you need to talk to them. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, quick question about cast and getting them attached during the development process. Is there ever a situation where they want to know the full budget and budget range, even though you can't really guesstimate until you have them attached?
You can give a budget range. You would probably put the budget range even in the pay-okay offer, but be generous. I would say, well, generous is the wrong word. Try to be as real as you can. I mean, let's say you do a movie and you want Jason Statham in it. Sure. And you know, you're below the line. The production costs are usually, they are what they are, and you're going to be very feasible about it. And you know, Jason Statham is going to cost you $5 million. He just does. So you know you're going to produce a movie for probably $3 million below the line because it's straight up, maybe drama, not too much action, but you can do it for below the line 3. And you know Jason's going to be 5. You're going to tell them the budget range of this movie is going to be anywhere between 7 and 9. You can give them a range. And I wouldn't give them necessarily a higher range, because then they go back and say, oh, if it's so much budget, then we can charge this range. But you can say to the agent, listen, if he's charging me $5 million, it's going to be tough. Can he go down, because I wasn't planning on paying more than maybe $6 million on the movie? It's a conversation. You can say, I know the quote is 5 for Jason, but can we have a chat about maybe lowering the quote based on this director being amazing and based on the story that shows more of his chops? He's not just an action dude that shoots people. He can actually show something. You know, give him a conversation that makes it meaningful, and now he drops it to 2.5. That's a conversation to be had. But you can say the range we were thinking was anywhere between, let's say it should be 8 million. You can say it's anywhere between 7 and 9, in that range. I don't know, could be less. But that's the range we're operating under right now. And that's fine. You don't need to give them an exact number.
Sure. And then
Yeah.
part two of that question would be for the payer plays. Is it a two-way street where the actor can use the same deal to back out?
Here's the thing with the actor. The actor cannot back out if you pay a down payment. So if the payer plays, very good question. I'm so glad you asked this, Griffin. If the payer play payment says, payer play offer says, Jason Statham is going to be hired for $5 million. We're shooting in New Mexico. During that time, budget is estimated 7 to 9. That shit's in there. And he needs to be available for this period of time for 4 weeks, and he needs to be available before to do this fitting, and he needs to be available later to do ADR and marketing and all that stuff. So all this is in there. And then it says, and we're going to pay, let's say, 25% of his fee as a down payment, as a holding fee. If you pay a holding fee, he can't go anywhere. If you don't have a holding fee in there, theoretically, he could say, you know what, I said I would do this movie with you in April, but I kind of don't want to. That's the risk of not paying the holding fee. I would always try to pay something because in exchange of money makes the contract real. That's also the same, by the way, with options. If someone tells you, I'll give you a free option, screw you, paying $1 changes everything. Pay $1. I'm not kidding. The many times I've done $1 options, hilarious. Take a picture of the $1 check to that person and attach it to your chain of title. Very important. Never do free options. I forgot that earlier. I'm so glad you guys asking these questions. This is really cool. I'm going on, and I'm loving the sound of my voice. Anything else?
I got a quick question about deferments.
Yeah.
Can I use deferments to help lower the equity share?
Yeah. Use it for anything. Yeah, because if you use deferments, you have less to finance, which automatically reduces your equity. Absolutely.
But then does it benefit me to, does it benefit me to kind of pump up what the deferments are for exactly that reason? Like their share gets smaller and smaller?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
More the better. More free stuff is always good.
Yeah.
Well, deferments are not really free because you're paying them later,
Yeah.
but they're free in the moment you don't have to fund them. Reduces the risk for the equity investor, reduces your risks. Perfect. Yes, please.
And sorry, one more question. For the equity investor, are they, then you say they own a piece of the IP, that means sequels and everything, right?
If you have them, yes.
Yeah, okay.
But you can do this, Christopher. Let me specify, because there is a way. They give you $1 million for this $5 million movie, right? The $1 million come back as $1.2 million from this $5 million movie. And now they say, well, if you do a sequel, you'll say, you know what? I will give you a small percentage in the sequel and the remake and the spinoff, but it's going to be a very small profit participation. So it's like 5%, 2%. Don't give him the same profit participation you gave him in the movie. That's something to think about. So when they ask for specifically, you know, remake, tell me how this goes, sequel, how this goes, you want to specify it. In fact, you always kind of want to, in your minds, make sure that the equity investor understands they're not going to get 20% of your IP on a sequel, because there's going to be another equity investor that has to pay for that would want that.
Right.
You know, so they will participate in the going forward merchandising and everything, but they're participating in a different percentage on that level, on all the extra stuff, all the extra rights. And that's totally negotiable. I would never give them more than 5% on all the extra stuff.
Right.
Just my point of view, but that's me, very personal.
Okay. Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Oh man, guys, you were amazing. Sorry it took so long, but we had a lot of fun, I think. And I shall let you go into your weekend. Yeah. I will send the recording, right?
Fantastic.
Right, and then I think, Christopher, I think I have some people that I'm talking to in office hours later. So just call my cell phone. I sent you guys a message with my number. Whoever has office hours got a message from me just to call me on that number, and then we can go either online here or we'll just do a call. Either or is fine.
Real quick question, Jeanette, too. You said at this meeting you would talk about the group project a little.
Oh my God, the group project.
We've gotten the group together.
Thank you. Let me, hold on. Oh my God. I totally forgot about this. Oh, I'm useless today. Hold on. No one leaves the room. I need to find my little thingy that I had here. Damn it.
Yeah, you said you'd say what.
I will. And I have it all written down because I have it in my thingy. Hold on. Don't go anywhere. Damn it. I had a whole note.
It was the last part about the group project.
I know,
think.
it was the last part, and I want to talk about this, but I made notes. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. This is it. Quickly.
Oh, hey, we need that. Okay.
Yes, we need that. I'm going to circulate this. Group project. Arnold, I love you so much right now. You have no idea. Here's what the group project is. First of all, it's an extra credit project that you have the choice of doing in the group or by yourself. If you're a leader of a project and you don't want to be a leader, ask someone else to be a leader, or send everyone else to the other group in your course. Every course has 2 groups, right? So there's always another leader there. And then what you do is you think about, as you go on over the weeks in your course, this is not due until 9 weeks from now. Think about, what project should we do? Think about, how should we put the finance plan together as you're learning about the finance plan? How should we write the synopsis? Who should be our package? You're learning about these things. As you're learning about these things, you talk about them and you're putting them in your group project. So this page will tell you what should be in the pitch deck. And there will also be a lot of stuff you'll learn about as to what should be in your pitch deck. And you'll get sample pitch decks to tell you what should be in your pitch deck. So don't freak out about the group project. It's going to be very structured. By the time you do it, you already know what to do because you've seen 15 examples. So not to worry. Basically what you think about is, what is my project? Where am I shooting? Who are my cast members? What is my vision? What's the director's vision? Who is my team? What are my visuals? What is my mood? What are my brands? What is my distribution plan? What is my finance plan? All these things are going to be in that pitch deck. And all these things are explained over the next weeks in the module. So you don't even need to know them now. I put them on this list together for you so you have an overview of them now, but you're learning about them as you go. Yeah? And again, do it only if you want to. I think it's a great learning experience because you're going to have to do it at some point for someone, for sure. So knowing how to do it is a good thing. And applying what you've learned in the end in a project is a good thing, but it's not a must. Okay?
Thank you.
I can let you go. Arnold, you're the best. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys. I was recording, and now what? And